Chapter 977. The most important thing for a team was to obey orders. Although Chuanjin was disorganized and undisciplined, they still obeyed Wuji's orders. Everyone had their own strengths. Accepting the opinions of professionals was one of their few strengths. The Scarlet Flame Battle Squad was even better. With Chuanjin's unique method of searching for the fragments, the quest had become much easier and faster. At this time, Wuji let the Scarlet Flame Battle Squad search for the fragments themselves. They didn't need to get involved in the pursuit. Naturally, they were happy to be at peace. Even if Emo Xiaobei didn't say anything, they wouldn't care. Under Wuji's command, Chuanjin continued to lead Shrouded Afterglow and the others around the street. Chuanjin's players were always good at tracking and anti-tracking. Moreover, they were very good at escaping. They didn't meet their enemies at all. Even if Shrouded Afterglow and the others had the coordinates of Chuanjin's players, they would only see their backs and then lose sight of them. At the same time, all the teams that bought information began to gather in Thorn City. Thorn City's players also began to notice that there were many new faces in Thorn City today. However, no one paid much attention to it. After all, these new faces were in groups of 10, and the badges on their chests were completely different. It was obvious that they belonged to different guilds. Otherwise, Thorn City's large guilds would have long since targeted Thorn City's large guilds if players from other major guilds invaded the city in large numbers. As more and more players gathered, Chuanjin's players began to feel that something was wrong. Damn, why are there so many people chasing us? Yin Lao Air was the first to feel that something was wrong. Although Yin Lao Air wasn't good at escaping due to class restrictions, he could still rely on his extraordinary reaction speed to chase dozens of players around the street. However, there were at least a few thousand players chasing after Chuanjin. Now, each of them had over 100 players on their tail, and the number was still increasing. With so many people surrounding and intercepting them, Yin Lao Air's weakness became more and more obvious. Naturally, he would feel very strained. Wu Ji replied, "The enemy is our old rival. Do you really think that he will place his bets on those people from the beginning? The enemy must have spread our information." Wu Ji was right. If it was a new opponent, they would definitely question Chuanjin's strength because of the number of people Chuanjin had. However, those who had fought with the people of the Quanjin sect for a long time understood the style and strength of the Quanjin sect, especially now that the enemy had been determined to be fish watching under the water. Fish watching under the water had experienced the ups and downs of 3 Evils Village and had personally experienced Wang Yu's deadly pursuit. He knew better than anyone how terrifying Chuanjin was right now. How could he be so naive as to think that a mere 100 people could take down Chuanjin in one fell swoop? Therefore, it was within Wu Ji's expectations that more and more people were chasing after Chuanjin. Damn it, how shameless! Seeing that his opponent was so cunning, Yin Lao Air said angrily, "What should I do now? There are people everywhere. I don't think I can hold on for long." "What time is it now?" Wu Ji suddenly asked. Chun Xiang said, "It should be 5 in the afternoon." "Yup, it's almost 5. It was just past 4:30 when I went offline to pee," Wang Yu said with certainty. Mingdu said angrily, "Damn it, we've been chased for 4 hours. I've never felt so aggrieved before. When can we counterattack?" Mingdu couldn't be blamed for being angry. With Chuanjin's usual strategy of attacking when the enemy was tired and retreating when the enemy advanced, everyone would fight and run at the same time. Even if there were injuries, at least there would be a sense of achievement. However, they couldn't even fight and could only hide. Although they didn't suffer any injuries, it wasn't Chuanjin's style. "It's fine." Wu Ji thought for a moment and said, "It's about time. Second brother, don't worry about the pursuers. Just run toward the central street. If you really can't hold on, use your ultimate move. We must lure them to the central street." "All right." Yin Lao Air nodded helplessly. "What about us?" Mingdu asked anxiously. Wu Ji said, "You guys run fast. Let's run 2 rounds first." "Damn it. Still running?" Hearing Wu Ji's order, Mingdu almost kicked back. Wang Yu smiled and said, "Are you stupid? When you're about to be surrounded, kill a few. They can't catch up to me," Mingdu said gloomily. Hee hee. Everyone laughed. Then can't you run slower? Ah, that's right. When I was surrounded just now, I killed a few of them with a blink chain kick. It felt so good. To place one's pride said proudly. Damn it, you guys are so despicable. Despicable, despicable. Bright Doe immediately understood what these guys were trying to say. The guild channel was immediately flooded with Bright Doe's emojis. Wuji casually muted Mingdu, then said with a dark expression, "You guys dare to disobey my order. Whoever lures the guards here, just you wait." Huh? Did I say something? I don't understand what you guys said. I just told Mingdu not to wait for death. Wang Yu, who instigated Mingdu to kill, quickly clarified. We don't understand either. We just told Mingdu to run slowly and not lose the target. The others also expressed their good intentions. Only to place one's pride had a face full of tears. Damn it all. You guys are bad people. Child, you're still young. Everyone shook their heads and sighed. Just as everyone was verbally attacking each other, Yin Lao Air had already started running for his life with a few hundred people. The movement speed of Shield Warrior was indeed something to be criticized. Apart from clerics, almost no other class was slower than a Shield Warrior. Fortunately, everyone wanted to capture Yin Lao Air alive. In addition, he had a full set of exquisite equipment and a celestial shield. Otherwise, he would not have been able to chase after people with his speed. Moreover, the people chasing after him were not in the same group. When Yin Lao Air plunged into the crowd, no one dared to use AoE skills, nor did they dare to use crowd control. This helped Yin Lao Air a lot. At this time, Yin Lao Air's actions fully demonstrated what it meant to be a tank. A man with a shield, he was like a tank, specifically plunging into the crowd, rampaging around as if there was no one around, causing his opponents to complain incessantly. There was no other way. Not to mention the fact that Yin Lao Air was like a fish swimming in and out of the crowd, making it impossible for anyone to attack him. In fact, their main goal was not to kill him. If they killed Yin Lao Air now, it would only benefit those bastards guarding the revival point. Chapter 978. In other words, having more people didn't necessarily mean more power. On the contrary, it could even be a bad thing. Look at what the 18 feudal lords who opposed Dongjue did. Look at what the 18 feudal lords who opposed Sui did. These were lessons learned in blood. It was precisely because Wuji saw this point that he made the people of the Quanjin sect keep hiding, creating the illusion that the Quanjin sect was weak, so as to wear down their unity. Watching the fish in the water thought he was smart enough, but this kid intuitively thought that as long as he had enough helpers, he could teach Xuanjin a lesson. He didn't know that people's hearts were unpredictable. Because of this, he was still a level lower than Wuji. Yin Lao managed to drag the pursuers for a few streets, from a remote corner to the central street, even though the pursuers were just pushing and shoving him along. At the same time, under the command of Wuji, the other Xuanjin members led the pursuers to the central street at almost the same time. Watching the fish in the water didn't go to waste. A stupid post had gathered hundreds of teams, and the level of these teams was remarkable. Although they couldn't compare to the top teams, they were quasi-experts. There was no lack of veteran players like Shadowing Sunglow. At this time, tens of millions of fully armed players blocked the central street, blocking Wang Yu's group in the middle. Hey, Wuji is really good. Take us to hell with you. Seeing that he had finally completed the task, but was surrounded like dumplings, Yin Lao Air couldn't help but sigh. You flatter me. Wuji smiled and cupped his hands at Yin Lao Air. At this time, Shadowing Sunglow walked to the front of the crowd, pointed at Xuanjin's group, and scolded, "Humph, you Xuanjin people do all kinds of evil. Today, we will enforce justice on behalf of the heavens and eradicate you shameless people." Hearing Shadowing Sunglow's words, the Xuanjin people were instantly speechless. It was clearly for his own benefit, yet he was shouting such a pompous slogan. This brat shrouding Sunglow really deserved to be called a reputable expert. The way he spoke was much better than others. As a result, Wang Yu and the others couldn't help but exclaim, "Wow, this person looks so handsome, but why is he even more shameless than Wuji?" Even some of the players surrounding the Quanjun sect blushed. Wuji ignored the mockery of Wang Yu and the others. He smiled. Boss shadowing Sunglow, you are also a person of status. Don't talk nonsense like enforcing justice on behalf of the heavens. You're just doing this for the task. Before becoming an expert, one had to have a thick skin. As a famous expert, shadowing Sunglow was clearly very qualified. After being ridiculed by Wuji, he didn't even blush. Instead, he laughed and said, it seems that Boss Wuji is as reasonable as the rumors say. A wise man submits to the circumstances. If you hand over the guide and make up for your mistakes, we can let bygones be bygones and let you go. Is that so? Wuji chuckled and said, Brother shadowing Sunglow, it's not that I don't trust you, but with your skill level, you can only be a local tyrant in your guild. How can you command these people? Why don't you come over here? I'll tell you about it. Then, once we leave safely, you can announce it to the public. Wuji was also a treacherous person. If Wuji casually agreed, shadowing Sunglow naturally wouldn't believe him. At this time, when he heard Wuji's idea, shadowing Sunglow was happy. Telling shadowing Sunglow first was to let shadowing Sunglow have the most reliable first-hand information. As for announcing it to the public, that didn't exist. As long as he had the guide, who would care about Xuanzhen's life or death? Shadowing Sunglow happily said, Since Brother Wuji thinks so highly of me, I know that it's better to be respectful than to refuse. With that, the sun-shadowing Ray left the group and walked straight to Wuji's side under everyone's watchful eyes. Shadowing Sunglow wasn't afraid of Xuanzhen's people. After all, there were hundreds of teams here. No one would take him seriously. If Xuanzhen's people dared to make a move on him, it would undoubtedly be an early death. Soon, shadowing Sunglow walked in front of Wuji and said with a smile, Brother Wuji, tell me, what is the guide? Wuji was afraid that there was an assassin next to him. He put his hand on shadowing Sunglow's ear and whispered word by word, Motherf asterisk her. You. Shadowing Sunglow's face changed. He was about to get angry. Unexpectedly, Wuji said with a face full of smiles, Boss shadowing Sunglow, you have to listen carefully. After we leave, you have to tell the brothers. Otherwise, if everyone is rude to you, don't blame us. Even though Wuji's voice wasn't loud, he used a loudspeaker and his words were clearly heard by everyone present. In an instant, everyone's gazes landed on sun-covering glow. Shadowing Sunglow was shocked when he heard Wuji's words. He immediately knew that he had fallen into a trap. He pointed at Wuji and said, Are you trying to sow discord? I will kill you. As he said this, shadowing Sunglow took out a dagger and stabbed it at Wuji. However, Wuji had a group of Xuanzhen experts protecting him. How could he let shrouding Sun Xiaowang's hand get to him? Wang Yu casually grabbed shrouding Sun Xiaowang and forcefully lifted him up. Shrouding Sun Xiaowang was immediately flipped by Wang Yu and fell to the ground. Hee. Wuji looked at shadowing Sunglow condescendingly and said, Boss shadowing Sunglow doesn't want to kill me in the game, right? Shadowing Sunglow's spirit and body suffered a double blow at this time. He lay on the ground as if he had gone mad. He waved his limbs and shouted, Don't fall into the trap. He is trying to sow discord. Seeing this scene, the pursuers were all dumbfounded. At this time, they didn't know who to believe. Although everyone's goal was the same, they were not a group of people. The people of Xuanzhen could not be trusted. Could shadowing Sunglow, who came to kill others for the sake of the strategy, be trusted? Of course. After chasing Xuanzhen for so long, these people knew that the people of Xuanzhen were extremely cunning and could not be trusted. So, they quickly divided into two factions and guarded against each other. However, although they were on guard, the encirclement was not chaotic. It was just that the target of the encirclement was now shadowing Sunglow's group. Shadowing Sunglow stared angrily at Wuji at this time and said, So what if you set me up? You still can't leave. Oh, is that so? Wuji raised his eyebrows. He looked at shadowing Sunglow and said faintly, Wait a minute, do you have reinforcements? Shadowing Sunglow was stunned when he heard this. Yes, Wuji nodded. At this moment, the whole sky was reflected red by a flash of lightning. followed by a roar in the sky. Who killed my child? Everyone looked up and saw that a crack had appeared in the sky above them. A green monster tore the crack open and crawled out of it. Chapter 979. F***CK. What is this? Everyone was dumbfounded when they saw this phenomenon. A magic that could tear space. Was this one of Chuanjin's ultimate skills? It wasn't that they were ignorant, but the way the illusory demon appeared was too arrogant. This was the first time the players had seen such a flashy entrance. It wasn't just the players who surrounded Chuanjin's group. Apart from Yu Huicheng, only a few players from the nearby main cities had seen the illusory demon boss. Although an illusory demon boss had appeared in Thorn City yesterday, only a few people had seen it because it was quite late. But very quickly, everyone came to their senses. It's a boss. It's a boss. It's actually a boss. Although the illusory demon's entrance was flashy, it was only level 50. A simple detect spell was enough to reveal its true form. Wuji fanned the flames. That's right, this is a boss. It can drop all kinds of cloaks. Drop cloaks? Hearing Wuji's words, everyone's eyes turned red. Right now, not even a single cloak fragment could be obtained, let alone a cloak. Wuji's words could not be trusted, but this illusory demon was definitely not fake. Even the illusory demon monsters on the street could drop cloak fragments. This illusory demon's entrance was flashy, so it wasn't impossible for it to drop cloaks. At the very least, it wouldn't drop fewer items than the monsters. For a moment, everyone's eyes fell on the boss, ignoring Chuanjin's group. At this moment, a white light suddenly floated in the crowd, followed by a shout, F***CK, who's stabbing us in the back? Do they want to take the boss for themselves? At the same time, white lights floated in the other directions of the encirclement, along with similar shouts. F***CK. Be careful of the people next to you. Hearing the commotion around them, the players surrounding the Quanjin sect were shocked. They hurriedly scanned their surroundings, then stood back to back with their companions, forming a defensive formation. In just a few dozen seconds, all the teams had returned to their respective camps. The encirclement that had originally surrounded the Quanjin sect had become riddled with holes and loopholes. It couldn't be helped. In front of a boss, morality was useless. Strangers beside, you could stab you in the back at any time. Right now, the only people you could trust were your friends in the party. Seeing that the players were falling apart at this moment, the Quanjin sect's team channel was also very lively. Haha, why is Dao Shui's acting so exaggerated? North CEU commented on Ming Jian Dao Shui's voice. Dao Shui explained, I'm not exaggerating. I just want to laugh. You bunch of noobs. To place one's pride, Ming Du and the others rubbed their palms together eagerly. Wuji smiled faintly and asked Shrouding Sunglow, How is it? You're the best. Shrouding Sunglow sighed and gave Wuji a thumbs up. In terms of numbers, Chuanjin and the others were definitely at an absolute disadvantage. No matter how strong Chuanjin and the others were, they had no way of fighting back against an opponent that was a few hundred times their number. However, Wuji saw through these people's weakness, disunity. Where there were people, there would be conflicts. Even players from the same guild would have small conflicts on normal days, not to mention that the players came from different main cities and guilds. The pursuers had a lot of people to begin with, and they weren't familiar with each other. It was impossible for them to understand each other and unite against the enemy in just one day. Wuji used this one and only weakness. First, he broke the opponent's mentality. Then, he used the disagreement between them to make everyone distrust each other. Finally, he threw out the boss's benefits. In the face of benefits, these people who weren't united in the first place naturally wouldn't hide it anymore. After these three moves, the player alliance completely collapsed. Shrouding Sunglow was completely convinced by Wuji. In the face of such a powerful opponent, ordinary people probably couldn't bear the pressure and surrendered. However, not only did Wuji not surrender, but he also seized the opponent's weakness and launched the most powerful counterattack, dragging the opponent down. Whether it was his extraordinary courage or his experienced tactical attainments, Shrouding Sunglow didn't even dare to think about it. Okay, stop talking nonsense. We're leaving. Before we leave, I'll send you guys off. Wu Ji smiled and casually snapped his fingers. The people of Quanzhen swarmed forward and wiped out shrouding Sunglow's group in no time. Then, while everyone was distracted, they quietly ran out of the encirclement and went into Mario's shop, which was not far away, to hide. At this time, the Red Flame Battle Team's players were already in the shop. Looking at the boss outside, Bai Yutong said in surprise, "Hey, I didn't expect this boss to appear after clearing all the small monsters." Then last night, yes. Wuji nodded and said, "We did it. TSK, 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 I knew it. Old cow, you guys got a lot, right?" Mario, who was rolling, looked at Xuanzhen's group and asked Wang Yu enviously. "Not bad," Wang Yu said, "but not as much as you Huicheng. Then, should we go and rob it now?" Mo Xiaobei also asked. This illusory demon boss didn't have much HP. If they just watched the boss get killed by others, it would be a big sin. "No need," Wu Ji said. "This boss is very interesting. We have to find a safe place to hide." "Not bad. You guys just wait and see." The Xuanzhen members, who had rich experience in killing illusory demons, heard Wu Ji's words and revealed cunning smiles. "Really?" The members of the Scarlet Flame battle team looked outside skeptically, only to see countless players swarming towards them from all directions. The players who had surrounded Xuanzhen had already blocked the road. At this time, when the players of Thorn City saw the boss, they rushed over to take advantage of it, just like Yu Huiqing yesterday. More and more players appeared on the street, and the scene became more and more chaotic. Thorn City wasn't like Afterglow City. There wasn't a guild like the Quanzhen sect here. The players weren't organized or disciplined at all. They followed the principle that everyone who saw a boss on the street would get a share of it. Anyone who passed by would casually touch the boss. Under the siege of so many players, the illusory demon was beaten into its second form in a few minutes. Suddenly, the weather changed, and the entire Thorn City looked like it was the end of the world. The players on the street all turned into green, illusory demons. F***CK, is this guy a god-tier boss? Seeing this scene, the Red Flame battle team members were shocked and asked. Mingdu laughed and said, "God my A***S. Now, as long as the players aren't in the same team, they all look at each other like this." Everyone looked outside the shop again. As expected, all the monsters on the street began to attack each other. Chapter 980. The illusory demon's illusions were terrifying and had a large area of effect. Almost all the players in the central street were affected by the illusions. The central street was already packed with people. As more and more Thorn City players joined the fray, more and more players were affected by the illusions. The number of monsters on the street also increased. Everyone was originally unorganized. Now that they looked around, there were monsters everywhere in the city. All of them were terrified and excited. Although the boss was in the middle of the street, everyone understood the importance of clearing out the small monsters before killing the boss. Moreover, this was an illusory demon. Killing it would result in pieces. As long as they could kill one before dying, it would be a win-win situation. As a result, the players of Thorn City and the players who were besieging the Quanzhen sect began attacking each other without fear of death. Because of the boss and the illusory demons, although a large number of these players died, they continued to join the battle. Their numbers didn't decrease at all. Instead, it seemed to be increasing. For a moment, the scene on the street was extremely chaotic. In addition, the illusory demon boss used forbidden spell after forbidden spell to join in the fun. Under the influence of all kinds of terrifying forbidden spells, it was as if the world was collapsing. Sure enough, staying in the shop was the safest. Looking at the chaotic scene on the street, Mo Xiaobei and the others could not help but feel lucky. If they went out to join in the fun, they would not even know how they died. These half-dead players were too scary. Seeing the shocked expressions on the faces of the members of the Scarlet Flame battle team, the bad guys from the Xuanzhen sect didn't point it out. In the end, it was Wang Yu who was more honest and said to the rolling Mario, "Actually, this is just an illusion." Illusion? Hearing Wang Yu's words, Mario and the others immediately received the notification that the illusion had been removed. When they looked outside, they saw that the monsters on the street had all disappeared and were replaced by players attacking each other. In the center of the battle, a short illusory demon was waving its staff, baring its fangs, and adding fuel to the fire. Damn, this boss is too scary. Seeing the illusory demon reveal its true form, Mario and the others could not help but sigh. Although the skills used by the illusory demon did not have much damage, the effects of these types of skills were definitely not any weaker than the forbidden spells of those god-tier bosses. After all, in this world, players were the most terrifying. To be able to make players kill each other, such a skill was simply a bug. Are we just going to watch from here? Mo Xiaobei asked Wuji helplessly when she saw the increasing number of players outside. Wuji said casually, "Let's wait and see. We'll kill the boss when they're angry." Kill the boss. Hearing Wuji's words, Bai Yutong could not help but pout. How do we get there now? Currently, there were countless players outside. There was no more space on the street, and no one could squeeze in. In such a situation, it was unrealistic to charge through the battlefield and reach the innermost area. Not to mention the fact that everyone was attacking each other and couldn't differentiate between friend and foe. Even if an assassin hid herself, she would probably get pregnant from the squeezing. It's okay, we have old cow. Wuji laughed. In the end, chaos would always end with order. The adaptability of the players was still very strong. Even if most of the players had lost their minds due to the shards, there were still quite a number of clear-headed players. As the large number of players died, a portion of the players began to realize the strength of this boss. After everyone revived, they began to consciously form groups before entering the battlefield. Not long after, the chaotic scene gradually became organized and orderly. Wuji had been paying attention to the changes in the battlefield from the beginning. When he saw that the chaotic scene was gradually under control, he smiled faintly and said to Wang Yu, "All right, it's time to reel in the net." "Okay." Wang Yu nodded, opened the door of the shop, and ran to the street. When the players on the street saw Wang Yu, they swarmed over like bees. Wang Yu did not even look at them as he stepped on the wall and ran to the roof. Then, without waiting for the players below to react, Wang Yu had already run to the position of the boss. At this time, the players' battlefield had expanded too much. Wang Yu ran on the roof for a distance before running to a position that was closer to the boss. Then, Wang Yu used Qin Gong and flew to the side of the boss in a few leaps. When the illusory demon saw Wang Yu flying over, it waved its staff and began to brag and shout forbidden spells. Milky Way Starburst, Fire Phoenix Prairie Fire, Cough Cough, Retard. Wang Yu did not have time to listen to it. He reached out and grabbed the illusory demon's throat, lifted it up, and flew to the roof, away from the player's sight. When Wang Yu flew to the roof, the Quanjun people had been waiting for a long time. The second stage of the illusory demon boss was already very weak, and everyone was familiar with it. After a series of wild attacks, the illusory demon boss was turned into flying ashes. The 50 all-purpose shards were obtained, and the illusions on the street were also dispelled. The players who were attacking each other were all stunned when they saw their opponents. What the F***CK is going on? It was the first time that most of the players had encountered such a strange scene. Some of the more experienced players said, "Meow, do we fall for the boss's illusion?" Since the boss's name was Illusory Demon, using illusion to explain it was very reasonable and logical. Hearing this explanation, everyone suddenly understood. Illusion. F***CK. We've died so many times, so it was an illusion. The sudden realization did not mean that everyone felt better. The previous battle was too tragic, and the average death count was as high as 5 times. Because of this boss, there were players who died and lost levels. Now that they knew that they had been tricked, there was no need to mention the resentment in their hearts. With resentment, they naturally had to find someone to vent it on. The opponent in front of them was the opponent from before. It was true that there were many misunderstandings in this battle, but at this time, everyone was already angry. No one cared about misunderstandings or misunderstandings. The various teams quickly got into position and prepared to F***CK it up again. However, at this time, a voice came from the crowd. Don't fight your own people. This boss was lured here by outsiders. Every injustice has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor. We have to make them take responsibility. Outsiders. Hearing this voice, everyone began to observe the surrounding players. And when the players who were chasing Chuanjin heard this voice, their faces immediately revealed a look of panic. A main city with hundreds of thousands of people seemed like a lot in the game, but in reality, it was not considered a lot. It was only the population of a town. In reality, although it was not possible for everyone in the same town to know each other, everyone still knew the names of the villages and villages in the same town. Similarly, the players of Thorn City had played the game together for a long time, so naturally, they also knew the guilds in their own main city and their guild badges. Chapter 981. Everyone exchanged glances with each other, then with the countless Thorn City players. Suddenly, they felt as if they had just received their retribution. Just a moment ago, they were surrounded by others, but now they were being surrounded by others. Kill these bastards! Someone in the crowd shouted, and the players acted as if they had heard the order and attacked the pursuers. Grandpa White Tiger once said that the People's War was a terrifying ocean. Of course, the fate of these invaders was also very tragic. Because the battle just now involved too many players and the number of players killed was too high, the Thorn City players, who had the upper hand, couldn't stop so easily. These guys probably wouldn't be able to escape for a while. This was called going for wool and coming home shorn. Meanwhile, Chuanjin's group had already returned to the shop and were sitting in front of the window, watching the show. Looking at the miserable state of these pursuers, Mingdu slammed the table and said angrily, "Damn it! Although these guys are unlucky, they still didn't catch that bastard watcher underwater in the end. This is so F***king depressing." "Ha!" Wuji laughed. "What's there to be frustrated about? There's a better punishment for watcher in the water." "What punishment?" Mingdu was puzzled. Wuji raised an eyebrow and said, "Do all city enforcement officers like you not know the law?" In a villa somewhere in China, a skinny young man with a fierce expression was wearing a game helmet and controlling his character to watch the chaos in Thorn City with a pained expression. At this time, a notification came from a game device. Someone is knocking on the door. "Do you want to exit the game?" Exit. Seeing the chaos in Thorn City and the people he gathered being chased like rats on the street, the young man didn't seem to be in the mood to continue playing and clicked the exit button. After exiting the game, the skinny young man washed his face and staggered downstairs to open the door. At this time, 4 or 5 tall and strong police officers rushed in. "Well, what do you want?" Seeing the police officers, the young man was stunned at first, then showed a panicked expression. "Your name is Ma Xinquan?" asked the police officer. "Yes, it's me. I didn't do anything illegal. You got the wrong person." The young man nodded repeatedly. The policeman asked again, "Is your ID in the game Rebirth developed by Longting Company and on the forum called Watching Fish Underwater?" The young man hesitated for a moment before saying, "It's me." "Then you're right." The police officer took out his identification and said, "You were suspected of spreading other people's privacy in public and profiting from it. You have been reported by the person concerned, and after investigation, the report is true. You are detained according to the Network Administration Regulations of the People's Republic of China." Hearing the policeman's words, Underwater Fish felt as if his heart had been struck by lightning. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that not only had Chuanjin figured out who was plotting against them, but they had also reported him. It was like 2 groups of people had arranged for a fight, but one of them had invited the teacher and the principal to the location of the fight. This was completely unconventional. So, the kid who was watching the fish underwater is going to be detained? Hearing what Wuji said, everyone asked in surprise. "Of course," Wuji said, "maybe the police have found his house through the internet." F***CK. How shameless. I've never seen such a despicable person. Everyone expressed their disdain for Wuji. Wuji said indifferently, "Underwater Fish sold our information for money, which has already violated our legal rights and interests. It has also further become cyber violence. Am I more despicable than him? This. Everyone thought about it and immediately changed their words. This idiot deserves it. Indeed, no matter how despicable the people from Xuanzhen were, it was built on the foundation of games. They had never touched the bottom line of the law and morality. There were many rules on the internet, and Underwater Fish did not abide by these rules when he cheated Duga Shaoling of her equipment or sold Xuanzhen's information for money. To deal with such people, it was better to put them in detention for a few days than anything else. Hint: if you encounter cyber violence, you must look for the police. To place one's pride said, if we knew that Wuji had reported that bastard, we wouldn't have had to go through so much trouble to plot against these guys. It's different, Chun Xiang explained. These people aren't Underwater Fish's underlings. The life and death of Underwater Fish has nothing to do with them. But if they die, it will have something to do with Underwater Fish, added Wang Yu. Wow, Wuji is so evil. To place one's pride immediately understood. The tragedy at Thorn City was all because of Underwater Fish. Now, not only were Golden Full Hall and a dozen other guilds involved, but there were also several hundred guild players from other major cities. Everyone had been attacked by Thorn City players a few times already. They couldn't bring their underlings to Thorn City to massacre the entire city, but taking care of Underwater Fish was still a piece of cake. If they were told the mastermind, Underwater Fish, who had offended so many guilds, probably wouldn't be able to survive in the game anymore. The pursuit outside was still going on, and no one knew how long it would last. Meanwhile, Xuanzhen and Scarlet Flame took advantage of the chaos to leave Thorn City. After obtaining the strategy provided by the Quanjin sect, the Scarlet Flame battle squad also began to collect the fragments. There were a total of 20 major cities in the 7th server. Xuanzhen could collect fragments from 4 major cities in a day, so it didn't conflict with Scarlet Flame. However, Scarlet Flame didn't have the ability to kill a boss, so the boss they lured out would naturally be taken advantage of by others. Of course, it could also cause a riot like the one in Thorn City. Because of Illusory Demon's illusion, other than Yu Huicheng, every major city was in chaos. Thorn City was a bit more chaotic, but it wasn't too obvious. The 3rd day of the event was the same as the 2nd day. Xuanzhen first collected Yu Huicheng's fragments, then cleaned up the neighboring cities. Yu Huicheng's players were still doing their graveyard sweeping quest, peacefully passing the day, but the other major cities were still in chaos. At 8 o'clock in the morning on the 4th day, the reign of the Tomb Sweeping Festival had faded, and the Tomb Sweeping Festival was officially over. For the past 3 days, everyone had been fighting against the illusory demon boss for the shards. Only the players of Afterglow City didn't use their weapons and focused on clearing the graveyard. Not only did they get EXP, but they also had 3 shards each. While Yu Huicheng was ranked first in terms of the number of cloak fragments collected, Yu Huicheng's overall strength increased to 15th in the game, surpassing the 7th server's capital city, Ares City. It had to be known that Afterglow City was only a small border city, let alone a large city like Holy Light City. It was even smaller than the neighboring Thorn City. The fact that it was able to raise its overall strength to the 15th rank was truly shocking. It couldn't be helped. While everyone was killing to gain EXP, Yu Huicheng's players were doing quests to level up. This was because they had a good city lord. Chapter 982. However, Yu Huicheng's city lord, Wang Yu, was currently sitting in the backyard of the city lord's mansion with Xuanzhen's group, splitting spoils. In this Qingming festival, Xuanzhen's group could be said to be the biggest winner. Apart from the fragments obtained from Yu Huicheng, Xuanzhen's group had also obtained most of the fragment from the surrounding 4 main cities. In total, with Yu Huicheng's gains, there were nearly 4,000 cloak fragments. Among them, there were 750 universal cloak fragments. Xuanzhen had a total of 11 combat members. Including the 6 support players, there were a total of 17 people. Apart from Wang Yu, who already had the Celestial Cloak, even if these fragments were used, most of Xuanzhen's members would still be left. A single fragment was useless. It would only be effective if it was exchanged for a cloak. Now that the event had ended, players would definitely start exchanging and purchasing fragments. With the scarcity of fragments, the price would definitely rise. Looking at the small mountain of cloak fragments on the table, Wang Yu and the others' mood could be imagined. These were not just fragments. They were all shining gold. To place one's pride, looking at the table full of fragments, said excitedly, "Oh my God, we're really rich this time. While everyone is buying fragments, let's hurry up and make our move." "Young man, don't be so anxious," Wu Ji said with a smile. "It's necessary to make our move, but there's no rush." "Oh? What do you have in mind?" Seeing Wu Ji's calm expression, Wang Yu could not help but raise his eyelids. Based on Wang Yu's understanding of Wu Ji, once this kid spoke with such a tone, he must have something up his sleeve. Wu Ji said, "You'll know in a bit." At this moment, a white light flashed. Ming Jian Daoxue came online with a face full of joy. Seeing the fragments on the table, Ming Jian Daoxue was first shocked, then he sat opposite Wu Ji. "How is it? How's the matter I asked you to do?" Wu Ji asked Ming Jian Daoxue. "Done." Du Sei made an okay gesture at Wu Ji and said, "Right now, on the forums, the price of a pugilist Cape Shard has risen to 900 gold coins, and the price of an assassin's and warrior's Cape Shards has risen to 1,600 gold coins." It seemed that the sewer profession wasn't completely without its benefits. At the very least, the price of its equipment was much cheaper than that of the sun profession. "Damn, are you for real? Are you talking about the cloak or the fragment?" Hearing Mingjin's words, everyone was shocked. Currently, gold-grade equipment was only worth around 1,000 gold coins. Yet a single shard had already reached such a high price. Had everyone gone insane? Ming Jian Daoxue smiled and said, "Of course it's a fragment. Don't forget that cloaks are the rarest dark gold equipment." This, hearing famous sword Daoxue's explanation, everyone felt relieved. At this stage of the game, dark gold equipment sold for 10,000 gold per piece. As a rare piece of dark gold equipment, the cloak also possessed the special ability of flight. This was the rarest of the rarest, so it was only natural that its price would rise by 5 times. TSK. Looks like we're going to be rich. Hearing this, the excitement on everyone's faces intensified. Hearing this, Wu Ji curled his lips and looked at this bunch of good-for-nothings in disdain. "We're going to be rich just like that? You guys are really short-sighted. Do you think you can double the price of the fragments?" Everyone looked at him with disdain. Unexpectedly, Wu Ji nodded and said, "I can. And it's not just this." "Damn, are you for real?" Hearing Wu Ji's words, everyone was stunned. Currently, selling these fragments at such a high price was already an astronomical figure. Yet, Wu Ji wanted to double this price. Even though they knew that Wu Ji was smart, they still found it hard to believe. At this moment, Wang Yu pondered for a moment and asked, "Could it be that you want to monopolize the market as well?" Seeing Wu Ji's expression, Wang Yu immediately thought of Evildoers Run Wild. Why was Evildoers Run Wild the #1 boss of Rebirth now? It was because this guy wanted to monopolize the market and monopolize the most profitable industries in the game, such as mines. From this, it could be seen that in this virtual world, only by monopolizing the market resources could one firmly grasp the profits. Ha ha! Hearing this, Wu Ji snapped his fingers and said, "As expected of someone from a rich family, Old Cow is born with a brain for business. Not bad. We have this condition now, which is to monopolize the market." "Yes." Ming Jian Daoxue also nodded and said, "I've already posted on the forums of the various main cities to buy the fragments." This, Chun Xiang pondered for a moment and said, "The game is so big, we're definitely not the only ones asking to buy it. How do we monopolize it?" Putting aside the fact that Xuanzhen's financial resources could not compete with the other big guilds for resources, even if the players were to sell the fragments, it would be based on the principle of proximity. Xuanzhen's reputation in Yuhuicheng was still good, but outside of Yuhuicheng, their reputation was in disarray. They could not compare to the influence of the other big guilds in their respective main cities. Even if they sent out a post asking to buy the fragments, it would probably be of no use. Wu Ji chuckled and said, "Hee hee, The news on the forums is just a bluff to divert the attention of those people. We just need to monopolize the resources of Yu Huicheng. Yu Huicheng? F*CK. Wuji, you're really a sly old fox. Hearing Wuji say this, everyone instantly understood. In this event, the players of Yu Huicheng could be said to have definitely profited. Because Wang Yu was the castellan of Yu Huicheng, every player in Yu Huicheng would obtain a fragment every day. Yu Huicheng had more than 300,000 players, and in 3 days, Yu Huicheng had obtained millions of fragments. Moreover, the fragments obtained by the other 299 main cities in the game combined was only 1/3 of what Yu Huicheng had. With such a huge amount of resources, did they still need to go to the forums to buy? As the saying went, the right time, the right place, and the right people. With such a good monopoly, if they did not do it based on the character of the people of Qianjin, it would be the same as throwing away a mountain of gold. Millions of fragments. Where are we going to get so much initial capital? Wang Yu asked as he rubbed his chin. Take the cheapest Grandmaster of Combat fragment, for example. One piece cost around 1,000 gold. Millions of fragments. This was probably something that only the richest people could play with. Old cow, you're worrying too much. Hearing Wang Yu's words, everyone could not help but laugh. Our target is the normal players without a guild. Lu Sun once said, don't let the goodies flow into the fields of outsiders. Players with guilds would naturally have their fragments bought by the guilds to equip elite players. How could outsiders get their hands on them? It was Wang Yu's first time playing a game, so it was reasonable that he did not understand the rules of the guild. The people of Qianjin were all old foxes, so naturally they would understand. Rebirth was a game that emphasized teamwork. Naturally, there were countless guilds. In Afterglow City, there were only a few solo players who didn't have a guild. Chapter 983. These individual players did not have many shards in their hands. The upper limit was only tens of thousands of shards. However, based on the current trend, the main cities other than Yu Huicheng were even more lacking. After all, the other main cities were not like Yu Huicheng, where shards fell from the sky. How could individual players have the ability to compete with guild players for shards? Even the smaller guilds probably did not have a chance. Moreover, the more main cities there were, the more big guilds there would be, and the demand would be even greater. This amount of shards was not enough for those big guilds to form a team, not to mention the leftovers to sell. From this, it could be seen that the shards in the hands of Yu Huicheng and the other two players would be the only resources in the entire game. Tens of thousands of shards would require tens of millions of gold. This was still an astronomical figure, but it was much less than what Wang Yu had estimated. How much money do we have now? Wang Yu asked after thinking for a while. The people in Qianjin were all very rich. They could basically be self-sufficient in terms of equipment. According to everyone's recent income, it was still possible for each person to have tens of thousands of gold. However, things like gold coins were constantly depreciating. Most people would keep some gold coins for turnover and sell the rest for cash through online auctions. Therefore, they did not have much cash on hand. Wuji waved his hand and said, money doesn't matter. We can borrow from the system first. Wang Yu nodded and said, that's a good idea. In order to ease the financial pressure of the players, the system added a rental and credit loan system not long after the open beta. With the system as the notary, there would never be any behavior like reneging on debts. TSK, Mingdu said disdainfully, since you have the money to monopolize, why are you still looking for us? Just give us a share of the money. Wuji said, Old Li, there is no such thing as reaping without sowing. Oh? You want to force us to buy and sell? Mingdu began to judge others by his own standards. Ha! Wuji laughed and said, do you think I'm you? I'm just asking you to do some manual labor. Manual labor? Hearing Wuji's words, the people in Qianjin felt a chill down their backs. The sunset in Yu Huicheng was as beautiful as ever. While the players were immersed in the joy of the harvest, a message flashed in the sky. Castellan announcement. Qianjin is purchasing all classes Cape shards at a high price and will gift Qianjin exclusive benefits. Location. City Lord's Mansion purchase price list. Pugilist's Cape fragment. 1,000 gold/Peace Knights Cape Fragment. 1,200 gold/Peace Assassins Cape Fragment. 2,000 gold/Peace. After making the announcement, Wang Yu turned his head and squinted at Wuji with a murderous look. Look, I'll help you make the announcement. Now, I don't have to do hard work, Wuji said awkwardly. You are the living signboard of Chuanjin. Then you also know why I'm a living signboard. Wang Yu moved his muscles and bones, making cracking sounds. Wuji hurriedly said, Okay, you don't have to do hard work. At most, I'll let others do it. Mother of Asterisk King Wuji, you coward who bullies the weak and fears the strong. Everyone pointed at Wuji and scolded. Wuji pointed at Wang Yu and glared at everyone. Do you guys not want money or your lives? Everyone looked at Wang Yu and then looked at Wuji. Finally, they lowered their heads to money and evil forces. When the announcement came out, the players in Yuhuicheng were immediately attracted by the news. At this time, everyone was familiar with the news of purchasing shards. Not only on the forums, but even guilds like Yuhuicheng, Blood Alliance, and Sword in the Sky were shouting. Although the solo players had 3 shards, they didn't have the financial ability to sell the shards to make a cape. It wasn't practical to give it away for free, so they were more than happy to sell it. However, these solo players had been around for so long, and they were all smart people. With the same price, everyone naturally had to wait and see and sell it to whoever offered a higher price. Not only was the price offered by Chuanjin 10% higher than others, but there was also the gimmick of Chuanjin's exclusive benefits. Naturally, it attracted everyone's attention. Chuanjin was very down-to-earth in terms of scale. A small group of a dozen people was very similar to these solo players. Now that they were able to reach this stage, they were definitely the role model of the weak group, the idol of the small group, the hope of the solo players, and the star of Yuhuicheng. Normally, everyone only heard of these people, but now that they heard there was an exclusive benefit, everyone naturally wanted to join the fun. Therefore, after the players received the announcement, they all ran to the mayor's residence. Inside the mayor's residence, Wuji had already called Li Shui and the others over to take charge of the purchase. As for the rest of Chuanjin, they stood in a row in the corner, allowing everyone to view them. Wang Yu hid far away and drank tea with Mayor Willie. Wuji pointed at the crowd and shouted, As long as everyone sells the shards to Chuanjin, we, the players of Chuanjin, will fulfill a small wish of his. This trash, Wang Yu was speechless. He couldn't help but feel lucky for his quick-wittedness. This B***-starred Wuji would even harm his own people. How was this selling hard labor? This was obviously selling sex. Really? I want an autograph from God Iron Ox. Is that possible? Everyone was extremely excited. There were even players who came up to ask for his autograph. Puff. Wang Yu spat out a mouthful of tea. He had already gone into hiding, but everyone still refused to let him go. This? Wuji glanced at the murderous Wang Yu, then wiped his sweat and said, God Iron Ox feels unwell for a few days every month. I'm afraid he'll go berserk. Everyone can find someone else. Okay. The player was obedient. He pointed at Exquisite Dream and said, I want this big sister to kiss me. In short, although the process was a little troublesome, it was very smooth, especially when they heard that the people of Chuanjin were allowed to be molested. These solo players were even more excited. After all, as the lowest level of players, it was rare for them to have a chance to be in close contact with a top existence like Yuhuicheng. For a time, not only the solo players of Yuhuicheng, but even the players of the major guilds came to the mayor's residence to join in the fun. Captain Don't Shoot, Blood Red War Flag, and the other guild leaders were heartbroken when they saw how popular Chuanjin's purchasing business was. His guild's elite team was still waiting to collect the cloaks, but the people from the Quan Zhan sect came to interfere. These people were really born to cause trouble. They had already taken so many shards, so why do they still want to eat less and take more? Of course, with regard to Chuanjin's behavior, these guild leaders could only choose to swallow their anger and endure in silence. They didn't even dare to raise their own prices. Chapter 984. Yuhuicheng's guild didn't dare, but that didn't mean that the other guilds didn't dare. With so many people in Yuhuicheng, it wasn't a secret that everyone had obtained shard. At this time, The forums were filled with posts of Yu Huicheng players showing off, instantly attracting the attention of all the major guilds. Because of this, many guild leaders didn't even bother to take the airship. They directly used teleportation scrolls and traveled thousands of miles to Yu Huicheng to buy shards. Among them, there were a few top guilds that were buying shards. Not long after Chuanjin and the others opened their stall, many stalls were set up on Trade Street. They all hung signs that they were buying shards at a high price. Seeing that there were people who dared to come here and steal business from Chuanjin, the players in Yu Huicheng were naturally very curious. They all went up to ask for the price. "Boss, how do we buy them?" 900 Grandmaster of Combat shards, 1600 Assassin shards. Market price. There's no limit. One of the stall owners, called White Cloak Crossing, raised his head and said with a smile, "TSK, you foreigners are so petty." Everyone couldn't help but laugh. When White Cloak Crossing heard everyone say this, his face turned red and white. He couldn't help but ask, "How do you know we're foreigners?" "Nonsense." Chuanjin opened a stall in front of the city lord's mansion to buy shards. Which guild in Yu Huicheng's territory would be stupid enough to steal business from them? Yu Huicheng players had a trace of admiration towards Chuanjin, this big guild that suppressed Blood Alliance. Their tone was very natural. "Chuanjin?" White Cloak Crossing was slightly startled when he heard this. White Cloak Crossing had been in the game for as long as Chuanjin's group. A veteran player like him had naturally heard of Chuanjin's notoriety and knew their style. However, crossing the river in White's impression of Chuanjin was still the same as before. Although he often heard about Chuanjin's deeds in Rebirth, he still regarded Chuanjin as the small group that had nothing to lose. Top large guilds like Azure Dragon Empire would never tread on dog poop. However, they weren't afraid of a person like Chuanjin. At most, they couldn't be bothered to provoke him. Hearing everyone say this, White Cloak Crossing River asked in surprise, "How much are they charging?" Everyone said, 1,000 gold for a Grandmaster of Combat, and 1,800 gold for an Assassin, with additional benefits. With your prices, you should just go home. F***CK. Hearing this, all the stall owners were stunned. Right now, the price of the shard was already at the same level as a gold equipment. It was already considered a sky-high price, but there were still people who were willing to pay 10% more than this sky-high price. Just who among these people was richer? What they didn't know was that large guilds like them bought shards for their own use. Naturally, they wouldn't borrow high interest from the system. However, this group of people from Chuanjin shards were for sale, and they didn't have to worry about the market. Of course, they wouldn't care about the system's high interest rate. If anyone dared to call out a price, based on Chuanjin's character, they would definitely raise the price even higher. After all, wool comes from the sheep's back, and when the time comes, the ones who would buy these shards would be from large guilds. After a few seconds, the stall owners couldn't help but curse. Mother of asterisk cur. These bastards are messing with the market. They actually raised the price so high. Yeah, this group of people is obviously doing this on purpose. This group of bastards raised the price so high. What's in it for them? Don't you guys know what kind of people Chuanjin is? Although it's their style to not benefit themselves. Seeing everyone whispering to each other, crossing the river in white robes also frowned. Although they were all large guilds, none of them were fools. As purchasers, the higher the price, the less the better. Hence, everyone tacitly agreed to follow the market price. No one was willing to be the first to raise the price. At this time, there was actually such a bird that stood out. It was indeed very uncomfortable. Moreover, this bird was a notorious evil bird that didn't play by the rules. Right now, everyone basically came with a quest. After being tossed around by Chuanjin, it was likely that no guild would be able to complete the quest and return. Thinking of this, crossing the river in White couldn't help but stand up and pack up his stall. "Old White, where are you going?" Seeing crossing the river in White packing up his stall, everyone couldn't help but ask. Crossing the river in White said, "I'm going to talk to Chuanjin's people." I'm going to. Hearing crossing the river in White's words, everyone stood up and packed up their stalls. Since they couldn't collect the shards now and had nothing to do, they might as well take a look at this legendary guild that destroyed everything they went. The trading street was close to the castellan's residence. In just a few steps, crossing the river, and the others arrive at the entrance of the castellan's residence. At this time, the entrance of the castellan's residence was filled with people. On Xuanzhen's side, not only were Li Shui and the others busy, even Mu Zixin was pulled over to help. There were 6 purchase points, and each one was filled with people. Seeing that most of the purchase points were girls, crossing the river in white was puzzled. Since when did Xuanzhen become a group of girls? Therefore, he curiously asked the Yu Huichang player beside him, "Where are the people from Xuanzhen?" "Over there." The player smirked and pointed to the corner of the wall. Crossing the river in white looked in the direction of the player's finger and saw Wuji's group standing at the foot of the castellan's residence's wall, interacting with the players, allowing the players to tease them. Of course, the so-called teasing was limited to a series of intimate actions. For example, the corpses of the players who asked for a kiss from Exquisite Dream or Yang Na were still warm. However, when crossing the river in white and the others saw this scene, their gazes changed from yearning to disdain. These people were the middle and upper echelons of the major guilds. Normally, they were all high and mighty existences. Not only did they mingle with these useless solo players, they even ignored the normal players of their own guilds. Therefore, in their hearts, experts should act like experts. The behavior of people like Xuanzhen's group was basically no different from clowns. When they thought about how these clowns stole their business, crossing the river in white, and the others were furious. They quickly walked in the direction of Wuji's group. "Which one of you is the boss of Xuanzhen?" Crossing the river in white, and the others unceremoniously pushed through the crowd and pointed at the people of Xuanzhen. I am. When crossing the river in white said this, the people of Xuanzhen subconsciously raised their hands to answer. Although Wuji was the leader of Xuanzhen, these people all treated themselves as the boss. Crossing the river in white's expression darkened. They once again labeled the people of Xuanzhen as undisciplined. This kind of person was worthy of being called an expert. It seemed that rumors were just rumors, they couldn't be taken seriously. Chapter 985. Just now, Xuanzhen's group was distracted dealing with other players, so it was normal that they didn't hear the hostility in White Coat crossing river's words. However, with the warrior's words, they would be fools if they didn't hear it. Xuanzhen's group of villains had always been lawless. When they had nothing to do, they even want to play with cats and dogs. The grass on the grave of someone who acted so pretentiously last time was already 3 feet high. Especially now, everyone was forced to sell their bodies and bodies for money. They had nowhere to vent their anger. Hearing the warrior's words, everyone's attention was drawn to him. "What did you say? I didn't hear you clearly." Mingdu tilted his ear and asked. The warrior sneered. "I said let you boom." Before the warrior could finish his sentence, Mingdu took out a shining staff from his bag and pointed at it. Suddenly, a lightning bolt as thick as a bucket fell from the sky and landed on the warrior's head. The warrior didn't even have time to groan before he was blasted into pieces. Everyone was shocked. When the players saw the docile Mingdu suddenly kill someone, they were all dumbfounded. The White Coat Crossing Rivers group was even more surprised. At this time, they all took a cold breath in their hearts. At this stage, the player's strength had increased. It was difficult to have a player who could kill someone instantly. Moreover, the warrior's equipment was not weak. It was shocking that he was so easily killed by a lightning bolt. "What's going on?" Wang Yu saw the sudden movement and quickly came over. Originally, when Mingdu suddenly killed someone, everyone was already panicking. At this time, when they saw Wang Yu come out, everyone's hearts almost jumped out of their throats. They panicked and retreated. Seeing that the players were in chaos, Wuji quickly comforted them. "Everyone, don't panic. Someone is here to cause trouble. We're not targeting you. Who's causing trouble? Who's causing trouble?" Wang Yu glared at the crowd. F***CK. Run. The players that Wuji had just comforted panicked again. F***CK, 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 F***CK. Wuji collapsed and let the players retreat. In any case, they had already used their fragments, so if they wanted to retreat, so be it. When the players saw Yu Huicheng and Wang Yu's reaction, White Shirt crossing the river, who was originally surprised, was even more surprised. Who the F***CK was this? Could his gaze kill? Just as everyone was astonished, Mingdu turned his ear to the side and asked White Robes crossing river and the others with the same expression as before. That idiot didn't explain it clearly either. What did you guys say? Everyone had witnessed the ferocity of this ugly mage. At this time, no one dared to speak carelessly, and they all shut their mouths. A wise man knew better than to fight when the odds were against him. They were all purchasing players, not fighting. How could they compete with these bastards who were fiercer? Only White, clothed crossing the river, stood up calmly and said, "Actually, we don't know who that person was. We're only here to find our boss Wuji." "Oh, who are you?" Wuji heard this and asked curiously. "My name is White, clothed crossing the river." "I believe everyone has heard of me," said White, clothed crossing the river. White, clothed crossing the river. White, clothed crossing the river during the last years of the Eastern Han Dynasty. When they heard White, clothed crossing the river's self-introduction, the surrounding players could not help but become restless. White, clothed crossing river was also a veteran expert. The guild he belonged to was also one of the top guilds in the country during the last years of the Eastern Han Dynasty. Such guilds were often mentioned on the forums. To think that they would come to Yu Huicheng to stroll around. White, clothed crossing river was very satisfied with the reaction of the players in Yu Huicheng, but the reaction of the people in Chuanjin was a little displeasing. Not only was the group not as surprised as White, clothed crossing river had imagined, but Wang Yu, the ignorant and inexperienced fellow, asked loudly, "White, clothed crossing river. Who is that? I've never heard of it." Wang Yu's words instantly caused White, clothed crossing river, who was feeling very good about himself, to blush. When they heard Wang Yu's question and looked at White, clothed crossing river's embarrassed red face, they could not help but laugh. "Haha, old cow, you're so bad." "Bad, my asterisk sis? I really don't know." Wang Yu clenched his fists and glared at the crowd. White, clothed crossing river's expression froze again when he heard that. When Wuji was done laughing, he asked again, "Who are these people?" White, clothed crossing river's awkwardness was slightly alleviated. He pointed at the players beside him and said, "This is Soaring Cloud's Pavilion Star Plucker. This archer is Starfire. He from the Firearms Battalion." Every time White, clothed crossing river introduced someone, the surrounding players would let out an "oh" and show expressions of "so it's him." Without exception, these people were all players from famous guilds. Although they were not top-tier experts, they were all famous. Other than newbies like Wang Yu, everyone knew them. When Wuji heard that, he asked with a serious expression, "May I know why you're looking for me? You're the legendary boss Wuji?" White, clothed crossing river asked in surprise when he heard Wuji's words. Xuanjin was infamous. He did not expect Xuanjin's boss to be so gentle. Of course, White, clothed crossing river was here to discuss business, not to cause trouble. Naturally, he could not say these words out loud. Hence, White, clothed crossing river took a step forward and said to Wuji, "We're here to purchase some things from Yu Huicheng, but the price in Xuanjin is slightly different from the market price. I think Boss Wuji should give us an explanation." As a player from a big guild, White, clothed crossing river had never cared about small guilds. Hence, his words were a little arrogant. Unexpectedly, Wuji's tone was even more arrogant. Not only did he ignore White, clothed crossing river's words, he even said coldly, "What's there to discuss? The highest bidder wins. Do you need me to teach you? If you're not convinced, you can raise the price. I'll be waiting for you anytime." You, White, clothed crossing river thought that he was a player from a big guild. No matter how arrogant Xuanjin was, they would have to bow down in front of big guild. He did not expect Wuji to directly slap him in the face. What did he mean by raising the price? He was not here to compete with a bunch of kids. Is Wuji not going to give face to our Eastern Han Dynasty and the other big guilds? White, clothed crossing river asked with a cold expression. That's new. Before Wuji could say anything, the other members of Xuanjin couldn't help but say, "What is the Eastern Han Dynasty? Is it worthy of us giving face? What is the Eastern Han Dynasty? I've never heard of it. Why don't you said again? White-clothed crossing river's expression was extremely cold after being ridiculed by the people of Chuanjin. The Eastern Han Dynasty was one of the top guilds in the country. It was easy to imagine how white-clothed crossing river was feeling right now after being humiliated by a group of a dozen gangsters. You, don't go too far. White-clothed crossing river pointed angrily at Wuji. Chapter 986. Who are you calling trash? Everyone's expression turned cold as they asked angrily. Meow. These guys were as unreasonable as the rumors said. They were clearly the ones who raised the prices and disrupted the market, yet they were calling others trash. They were all from big guilds. Which one of them wasn't a person whose word was law in their own city? How could they endure being mocked by Wuji? Wuji pretended to be surprised and said, "Of course I'm calling you trash. Is there something wrong with your intelligence?" You, white-clothed crossing, and the others were about to explode in anger when Mingdu suddenly shouted, "Wuji, why are you wasting words with these trash? Just kill them." As he spoke, Mingdu raised his staff and was about to cast a spell. Everyone had witnessed Mingdu's ferocious magic attack before. Mingdu could even insta-kill a warrior. Even other classes would be no match for him. When they saw Mingdu raise his staff, they were all shocked and hurriedly retreated. Although these people were used to being domineering, they weren't stupid. This was Yu Huicheng, not their territory. Even if they were killed by Mingdu, they wouldn't be able to get back at him. "Boss Wuji, is Chuanjin really going to make life difficult for us?" White-clothed crossing yelled after retreating out of Mingdu's attack range. Wuji still had the same expression as he said, "No one is going to make life difficult for anyone. I'll still say the same thing. The highest bidder gets it. You can't let these players with shards suffer just because you're a big guild." Well said. When Wuji said this, the surrounding players couldn't help but cheer. Although these unaffiliated players didn't have the right to speak, everyone understood in their hearts. Wuji's words were a bit pompous, but lowering the purchase price wasn't bad for Chuanjin. It could also save them money. At the end of the day, the ones who would suffer losses were the normal players who planned to sell the shards. Several hundred gold might not be much to large guild players, but to independent players, it was the equivalent of their entire net worth. Normally, large guilds monopolized resources. Not only did they suppress independent players, but they were also trying to take advantage of this small amount of gold. They were simply not giving these independent players any chance to live. Everyone would go to the forums to play the game, so they naturally knew that only Yu Huicheng's players had 3 shards. As for how these 3 shards came about, Yu Huicheng's players knew very well. It could be said that without Chuanjin, with so many big guilds suppressing them, the Cape Shard were something that the unaffiliated players could only dream of. Because of the complete reality sect, everyone had shard. Now that the complete reality sect was offering a higher price than the market price, not only did the major guilds not want to raise the price, but they also wanted to suppress the complete reality sect's price. The more they thought about it, the angrier they got. Seeing the behavior of White Crossing River and the others, and then thinking about how they were suppressed by the big guilds, these players grew angrier. The more they thought about it, the angrier they got. Seeing the behavior of White Crossing River and the others, and then thinking about how they were suppressed by the big guilds, these players grew angrier. Very quickly, the emotions of the surrounding players were stirred up. Boss Wuji is right. You big guilds are nothing. My fragment was given to me by the Quanzhan sect in the first place. I should even give it to the Quanzhan sect for free. I definitely won't sell it to you bastards. That's right. God damn it, I won't fight for it. Even if you pay me 2,000 gold, I won't sell it to you. Looking at the angry crowd by Yidu Jiang and company didn't know what to do. They never expected that Wuji would actually turn the tables on them. After what Wuji had done, they no longer cared about the coins. What they cared about was the oppression they had suffered from the big guilds. At this moment, not to mention the fact that the Quanzhan sect didn't lower their prices. Even if everyone raised their prices, these players probably wouldn't care about them. White Crossing River looked at Wuji, inwardly shocked. With just a few words, Wuji had stirred up the players' emotions. He had even made them pay for it. This scheme, it was no wonder Chuanjin could run amok in the gaming circle for so many years. Even after provoking so many enemies, they still got away scot-free. It seemed that it was not without reason. Since Boss Wuji isn't willing to give us face, we have no choice but to return. White Crossing River knew that he had suffered a crushing defeat and that there would be no outcome if he continued to fight. He might even get beaten to death. Hence, he could only cup his hands at Wuji. We're leaving just like that? Hearing White Crossing River's words, the others had complicated expressions. They had come all the way here to collect shards. Not only did they not receive a single piece, but they were also scolded for being trash. What the heck was this? Wasn't this just to be despicable? White Crossing Riverside. What else can we do? This is Yu Huicheng. Hearing this, everyone was speechless. As the saying went, a powerful dragon could not suppress a snake in its own territory. No matter how amazing these people's guilds were, they only had tens of thousands of people. No matter how bold they were, they wouldn't dare to provoke Yu Huicheng. A gentleman's revenge was never too late. They didn't believe that these people from Chuanjin would stay in Yu Huicheng for the rest of their lives. Don't be in such a hurry to leave. Seeing that White Crossing River and the others were about to leave, Wuji suddenly said. White Crossing River turned around and asked, Boss Wuji, is there anything else? Seeing that you guys came all the way here, you can't go back empty-handed, right? I have some shards here. Do you want them? Wuji asked with a smile. Oh, what's the price? White Crossing River raised his eyebrows and asked. Wuji smiled. 1,500 gold for Grandmaster of Combat shards. 3,000 gold for Assassin shards. Boss Wuji, are you joking with us? You can be killed, but not humiliated. Even if you don't want to sell, you don't have to do this. White Crossing River's face turned even uglier when he heard the price. 3,000 gold. A gold-grade assassin's weapon was only 3,000 gold. This broken shard cost 3,000 gold. It was double the market price. Only an idiot would buy such a ridiculous price. Hearing this, Wuji smiled. Why would I? I sincerely want to sell, and this is a friend's price. Forget it, we can't afford it. White Crossing River snorted coldly and turned to leave. The others followed closely behind. Seeing that they were leaving, Wuji wasn't surprised at all. Instead, he shouted from behind, If you want it, come find me. But it won't be a friend's price anymore. F***CK. Hearing this, White Crossing River almost stumbled and fell to the ground. Seeing White Crossing River's disheveled appearance, the others couldn't help but laugh. It was said that everything was afraid of comparison. With White Crossing River and the others as the villains, the image of Chuanjin's people was infinitely magnified in the hearts of these solo players. Chapter 987. Yu Huicheng had a large population base. Even if players without guilds made up a small portion of the population, there were still tens of thousands of people. Even though the Quanjun sect had opened 6 trading points, they were still busy from morning until evening and still hadn't finished. However, seeing the increasing number of shards and thinking about the large amount of silver, everyone was tired and happy at the same time. Of course, Wuji, Mingdu, and the others were in pain and happiness at the same time. Wang Yu was also a soft-hearted person. Seeing Mingdu and the others being teased like beasts in a cage, he could not bear it. So, he sighed and left the Castellan's mansion early to train alone. Out of sight, out of mind, it was not until 9 o'clock at night, when Wang Yu came back from leveling up and went offline, that Wuji and the others in the Castellan's mansion finally finished their work. Seeing that everyone was finally free, Wang Yu was happy for them from the bottom of his heart. He laughed and asked, How's everyone's harvest today? Trash. Everyone gave Wang Yu the middle finger in unison. Meow. When we couldn't find you when we were working, you came to ask about the harvest when we were busy playing. I'm just asking. You won't lose anything. Wang Yu laughed. Hee. Wuji said excitedly. There are a total of 34,545 shards. Including ours, it's almost 38,000 shards. and that's not including the all-purpose shards. Not bad. It seems that our cohesiveness is quite strong. Wang Yu was slightly surprised. He did not expect Wu Ji and the others to be able to collect so many shards. Currently, Yu Huicheng had more than 10,000 solo players, which meant that almost all the shards that could be collected were here. It seemed that the group of people crossing the river in white was quite useful. Otherwise, with Chuanjin's reputation, it would be lucky if they could collect even half of the shards. Puffed. Everyone looked at him in disdain. It's all our credit. It has nothing to do with you. Do you dare to say that again? Wang Yu looked at everyone with a smile and held his wrist. Everyone could not help but cry. Damn, this despicable cow is getting worse. Old cow, you're actually level 50. Wu Ji suddenly saw Wang Yu's level and could not help but ask. Wang Yu nodded and said, yes. I've just reached level 50, and I haven't done the awakening mission yet. When Wang Yu reached level 50, she received a system notification that she had reached a bottleneck in her cultivation. She had to go to her mentor to accept and complete the awakening quest before she could continue leveling up. You came at the right time. Come, put on this cloak and fly around. As he spoke, Wu Ji took out a cloak and passed it to Wang Yu. Everyone was extremely envious. Meow. They had been working here for the whole day, but the one who didn't work was the one who wore a cloak first. What do you mean by this? Wang Yu knew that Wu Ji would cheat even his own people when he went crazy, so seeing Wu Ji being so enthusiastic, he could not help but be wary. What are you afraid of? Wu Ji smiled. It's just an advertisement. Chuanjin finally collected all the fragments. Naturally, they had to set a high price. Those big guilds would definitely hesitate when they saw such a high price, so they must put out the advertisement to attract buyers. The usage level of the cloak was level 50. With Wang Yu as a living sign, the attributes were much better than a specialized cloak. I see, Wang Yu nodded and said, I have a cloak myself. As he said this, Wang Yu took out his angel wings from the bag. At the same time, in the office of the guild in the late Eastern Han dynasty, the president, Drunken Forest, was listening to the report of crossing the river in white clothes. What? You didn't receive a single fragment? That can't be. Didn't we agree to let you collect at least 500? Hearing white clothes crossing river, wine pool, and forest of flesh stood up immediately. White clothes crossing river said gloomily, I'm helpless too. Yu Huicheng's waters are deep. Someone is driving up the prices there. We can't do anything about it. Not only us, but even the people from Soaring Clouds Pavilion and Divine Secret Pavilion didn't receive any. Hearing this, Wine Pool and Forest of Flesh were puzzled. Driving up the prices? Who dares to do that? Yu Huicheng only has one blood alliance. It's a bit difficult to deal with. Blood Red War Flag isn't stupid either. They actually dare to go against so many big guilds. It's not Blood Alliance. White Clothes Crossing River said. Blood Alliance didn't even show up. Who's that? Wine and Forest of Flesh said in displeasure. Can King finish your sentence in one go? Crossing the river in white robes hurriedly said. It's the Quanjun sect. Chuanjin. Wine Pool and Forest of Flesh was stunned. Then he said in confusion. It's actually this group of unscrupulous people. You didn't tell them about our Eastern Han dynasty's name? This. White Clothes Crossing River hesitated and said awkwardly, it's better not to say it. Wine Pool and Forest of Flesh did not get angry when they heard this. Instead, they nodded and said, oh, that's true. These people don't listen to force or persuasion. They even challenged 3 Evil's manner. It's good that you guys didn't die. Hearing Wine Pool and Forest of Flesh say this, White Clothes Crossing River felt wronged. If he didn't admit defeat quickly, wouldn't he be dead now? Why don't we bring more people and try again? White Clothes Crossing River thought and asked. Although White Clothes Crossing River admitted defeat, he was still a little unconvinced. He wanted to bring some people to Yu Huicheng to get back at him, who knew that Wine Pool and Forest of Flesh would say, if we can't get it, then we can't. If we can't get it, the other guilds definitely can't. Those people are not to be trifled with. We're just going to take it. White Clothes Crossing River never thought that Wine Pool and Forest of Flesh would let it go so easily. After all, it was White Clothes Crossing River who was being threatened. Seeing Wine Pool and Forest of Flesh's attitude, White Clothes Crossing River was very disappointed. Wine Pool and Forest of Flesh said helplessly, "So what? Can we work with the other guilds to kill you, Huicheng? It's fine if we win, but if we lose, then we'll be the ones to lose face. Also, you don't know those people in Chuanjin." When Wine Pool and Forest of Flesh mentioned the name Chuanjin, their hearts were filled with endless emotions. White Clothes Crossing River thought and said, "Actually, I have a way to stall them to death." Stall them to death? How? Wine Pool and Forest of Flesh was slightly stunned when they heard this. White Clothes Crossing River said, "There are only a dozen or so people in Chuanjin. They definitely didn't buy the shards for themselves." That's true. Wine Pool and Forest of Flesh nodded. It was just a dozen or so people. A few hundred shards was enough. White Clothes Crossing River said, "Since you aren't using it for yourself, then they definitely want to monopolize the market and sell it at high price. If a big guild like us can't handle so many shards, how can a small guild like them get so much money? Unless loans." Wine Pool and Forest of Flesh seemed to suddenly understand something when they heard this. Chapter 988. Hearing Crossing the River in White, Forest of Flesh sucked in a breath of cold air. Crossing the river in White was right. Things like loan interest were directly proportional to the depreciation of the currency. With the current depreciation of gold coins, the loan interest from the system could be said to be ridiculously high. Chuanjin bought so many shards and borrowed at least tens of millions of gold coins. They probably used up everything in Yu Huicheng's main city to get it. The interest of so much money in a day was also an astronomical figure. The game was not like reality. The system was the most important. If you couldn't afford it, the system would not give you any face and directly rob you of all your assets. If it was really as Crossing the River in White said, and all the major guilds were not in a hurry to make a move, then wouldn't this be a bit too extreme? Wine Pool and Meat Forest frowned and said, "If the Chuanjin sect finds out that we did it, they will definitely hate us." Crossing the River in White laughed. "If they are heartless, we will not be righteous. Do you think we, a guild of tens of thousands of people, are afraid of them?" "Yes." Forest of Flesh nodded. "What you said makes sense. Let's do that. These bastards should learn their lesson, or else they will really look down on the major guilds." Wine Pool and Meat Forest was no fool. If it was just him alone, he naturally wouldn't offend the complete reality sect. However, if he were to ally with so many large guilds, as the saying goes, judge the situation. He refused to believe that a mere dozen or so people from the complete reality sect would be able to overturn the heavens. Thinking of this, Forest of Flesh calmed down and opened his friend's list to create a chat room. On Yu Huicheng's side, Wang Yu took out his angel wings and was about to equip it when he suddenly received a message from Evildoers Run Wild. "Boss, give me permission." "Permission? What permission?" Wang Yu was puzzled. What was wrong with this kid? "Permission to enter the main residence. The soldier at your door wants to beat me up." Evildoers Run Wild replied. Wang Yu was speechless for a moment, then gave Evildoers Run Wild permission. Then, Evildoers Run Wild barged into the room. "Wow, this courtyard is not bad. It's so stylish, and there are so many little brothers guarding the door. I'll buy 2 NPCs to put at the door someday. What are you doing here?" Wang Yu was dumbfounded by Evildoers Run Wild's upstart face. Hee, brother." When Evildoers Run Wild saw Wang Yu, he raised his face and walked up to Wang Yu. He raised his index finger and waved it in front of Wang Yu's eyes. "Is this how you talk to your creditor? Debtor?" Wang Yu was even more depressed. "Are you still dreaming? Are you asking for a beating?" At this time, Wu Ji quickly came out and said, "Old cow, be respectful. This is our biggest shareholder." "Shareholder?" After hearing Wu Ji's words, Wang Yu immediately reacted. He pointed at Wu Ji and asked, "Where did you get the money to buy the shard?" "Of course it's from me." When Evildoers Run Wild heard this, he smiled and took out a loan contract. "I'm not bragging, but you definitely won't be able to find another person who can take out so many gold coins in the entire game. Wang Yu heard this and was completely stunned. Well, this kid Wuji is really everywhere. He even learned how to attract investors, and the investor is actually Wang Yu's brother. No wonder Wuji didn't have a problem with me not working. He's been waiting for me. Why did you look for this kid? Wang Yu asked in puzzlement. It's so easy to get a loan from the system. Borrowing money from evildoers run wild is obviously doing me a favor. It'll be fine if I earn money, but if I lose money, how can I face others as a brother? Hee hee. Evildoers run wild smiled and said, Big brother, as the saying goes, don't let the goodies flow to outsiders. You're not happy that I'm here to take advantage of you? You're taking advantage of him? Wang Yu looked at Wuji and then looked at evildoers run wild. He almost dropped his head to the ground. The people from Xuanzhen were famous for taking advantage of others, especially Wuji. People gave him the nickname, rather die than lose. This young man from evildoers run wild wanted to take advantage of Wuji. He was too naive. Wuji heard this and immediately said, Old cow, what are you saying? We're all on the same side. Isn't your brother my second brother? Do you think I'll cheat him? Isn't it easier to get a loan? Wang Yu said again. Wuji laughed and said, A loan from the system is basically a return of 13 out of 10. The big guilds aren't idiots. Everyone isn't level 50 yet, and they're not in a hurry to purchase. Wouldn't we lose money if we bet on them? This makes sense. Wang Yu couldn't help but nod when he heard this. Indeed, if his brother had money, he wouldn't need to borrow a high-interest loan from the system. Moreover, with the value of the people from Xuanzhen, they wouldn't be able to get a loan that much. After all, the system's evaluation of a player's assets was more professional than in reality. How much will he get? Wang Yu whispered to Wuji. As the saying goes, even blood brothers should settle accounts clearly. On one side was himself, and on the other side was evildoers run wild. Wang Yu had to weigh the pros and cons carefully. Otherwise, the boat of kinship would turn over old debts. What do you mean by how much? Wuji said loudly. These shards belong to second brother. Not bad, not bad. I'm here to receive the goods. Evildoers run wild nodded in satisfaction. F***CK. We've been busy the whole day. Do you think we're just working? Hearing Wuji and evildoers run wild say this, the people from Xuanzhen were instantly dissatisfied. One must know that shards were considered rare goods. As long as the price was raised, it would be violent. Everyone was waiting to monopolize the market and earn a huge sum of money. However, Wuji sold it just like that. Even though everyone knew his character, they were still in a bad mood. At the end of the day, evildoers run wild was a businessman. Seeing that the people from Xuanzhen were dissatisfied, he smiled and said, It's not working. I'm your biggest buyer. I'll pay you double the price for these shards. How about it? As soon as evildoers run wild said this, the people who were originally angry immediately deflated. What did it mean to be rich and overbearing? What did it mean to throw money away? These words were coined for evildoers run wild. There were tens of thousands of shards. Just the purchase price alone would cost at least 50 million gold. Yet, evildoers run wild doubled the price with just a few words. It was fortunate that he was the biggest mine owner in Rebirth, a local tycoon who made a fortune from resources. Otherwise, if someone else dared to say this, the people from Xuanzhen would have slapped him in the face so that he wouldn't dare to brag. F***CK. Although they were displeased, the price was really hard to refuse. If it were the people from Xuanzhen selling it themselves, they might not be able to sell it for double the price. However, evildoers run wild was different. He was the most professional in monopolizing the market. If they bought it at this price, they would definitely be able to sell it at a higher price. How about it? You're all my brother's friends and my brothers. I'm taking advantage of my bottom line. Evildoers run wild played the family card. Second brother, you're looking down on us by saying that. Right. Do you smoke? I'll buy it for you. Second brother, have some tea. Money was indeed omnipotent. Under the bombardment of 100 million gold, the people from Xuanzhen immediately became lackeys. P.S. Wasn't the 100 million gold a little exaggerated? Chapter 989. Seeing the attitude of the Chuanjian people, evildoers run wild was very proud. He sat on his seat and crossed his legs. All that was missing was someone fanning him. Soon, the person fanning him came over. Wuji smiled and said, "Old Cow is now level 50. Do you want him to wear the cloak to see the effect?" "Yes." "Not bad." Evildoers Run Wild was happy when he heard that. He pointed at Wang Yu and said, "Little feather, wear the cloak and let me see the goods." "Damn you." Seeing evildoers run wild being so extravagant, Wang Yu's face darkened. "You must be tired of living." Evildoers Run Wild was proud. "Hey, you're talking as if I'm not your master." "That's right. Old Cow, how can you talk to second brother like that? Quickly wear the cloak and let second brother see it." The shameless Chuanjian people all glared at Wang Yu. F***CK, you be asterisk cheese. Wang Yu wanted to cry. He could only take out the angel wings and put them on. However, when he put on the wings, the sky above Yu Huicheng suddenly became covered with dark clouds. Immediately after, a system announcement sounded in the World Channel. City Lord Yu Huicheng, Iron Ox, as a neutral party, slaughtered gods and humiliated gods. His crimes are heinous and cannot be tolerated by the heavens and earth. All players who believe in the light have the right to punish him. Light Oracle, within 48 hours, anyone who kills God Insulter Iron Ox and his people will receive a special reward from the Light faction. The announcement was repeated 3 times. At the same time, the title God Insulter's people appeared above the heads of all Yu Huicheng players. God Insulter's people, title, Light Faction Honor Points -20 all attributes +2 item introduction. God Insulter's people have a unique power of faith. Wang Yu also had the title God Insulter above his head. God Insulter, title, Light Faction Honor Points -100 all attributes +10 leader aura. Increases all stats of civilians within a 5,000 radius by 10%. Item introduction. A rebel who challenges the authority of God. F***CK, what's going on? The players in the game were dumbfounded when they saw this system announcement. At this moment, everyone only had 2 thoughts in their minds. His first thought was, this Iron Ox is really F***King awesome. He can actually kill a god. His second thought was, this Iron Ox is really an idiot. He actually dares to kill a god. Rebirth was set in a religious setting. There were 2 types of players, those who believed in light and those who believed in darkness. Gods were considered to have absolute authority in the game. Setting aside the gods' earth-shattering strength, their influence alone was not something a player could challenge. The Yu Huicheng players were also dumbfounded. What the hell was going on? Why did they suddenly become the target of public criticism? Everyone suddenly had a feeling that they had boarded a pirate ship for no reason. However, the one who was even more confused was Wang Yu. Wang Yu was also aware of his own strength. Although Wang Yu now had the ability to solo some bosses, existences like gods were also a taboo that Wang Yu dared not touch. Not to mention, for example, the Knight of the Round Table that he met not long ago was one of the NPCs that Wang Yu currently could not deal with. The Light Faction's territory was so big, there were at least 100 experts like Esther. Why would Wang Yu want to die when he was living a good life? How could this be? Wang Yu asked helplessly. Up until now, Wang Yu still had not found out what the problem was. Evildoers Run Wild said with a look of reverence. As expected of an older brother, you've been provoking people along the way. This time, even the God of Light has been provoked. Wang Yu said gloomily, cut the crap. I'm being wronged. Wrong my asterisk guess. Didn't you see the attributes on your cloak? Wuji curled his lips when he heard this. The attributes on the cloak? Wang Yu quickly opened the equipment pane and saw a line of words under the item description of the angel wings. As the symbol of the God of Light's most loyal servant, the angel wings possess unparalleled power and supreme glory. Only those who are loyal to God are worthy of the glory bestowed by God. Other than that, all are filthy defilers of God. Was Wang Yu a person who had finally become a god? Obviously not. Wang Yu was not even a player of the Light faction, let alone a person who was loyal to God. This broken cloak was most likely the equipment of a priest or a knight. now that Wang Yu had worn it. Wang Yu had become a defiler of God. Yes, it was filthy. Damn. There's even this? Why didn't you say so earlier? Wang Yu broke down. This was clearly a trap. Wuji spread out his hands and said, I just thought of it. What do we do now? Mingdu interrupted. It was one thing for Wang Yu to offend the god of light, but the petty god of light actually hated Yu Huiqing's players as well. This godly item was really terrible. Wang Yu said gloomily, What can we do? Do it. Do you think you can run away? This. Hearing what Wang Yu said, the Chuanjin members fell into deep thought. Wuji even rubbed his chin and said, Do you think we can still make it if we migrate now? Everyone said angrily, That's not good. That's too disloyal. TSK. Wuji sked and sighed. I was just asking casually. I didn't expect you disloyal people to really have this idea. F***CK Wuji, you trash. Everyone cursed. Just as everyone was still attacking each other, Evildoers Run Wild suddenly said, Migrate my ass. I can't even leave now. What's going on? Everyone was shocked. Evildoers Run Wild said, Take a look at the quest panel yourself. The Chuanjin members quickly opened the quest panel and saw a mandatory quest at the top. Fight for Faith, quest level S, quest introduction. Yu Huicheng is the main city of the neutral faction. The city lord, Iron Ox, has been labeled as a god insulter by the Light faction for slaughtering the gods. The Light faction's army has arrived. As a citizen of Yu Huicheng, you have the right to take up arms to defend your home and fight for your faith. Quest details. Under the attack of the Light faction's army, defend the main city for 48 hours until the army retreats. Quest reward. The more powerful you are, the less responsible you will be. Only with enough power can you have absolute freedom. Punishment for failure. Without your home and country, what else can you have? Quest hint. This is a mandatory quest. During the quest period, all teleportation points and ports in Yu Huicheng will be suspended. All players are not allowed to leave the main city. There is still 120 minutes before the Light faction's army attacks. Faith my ass. Everyone wanted to cry when they saw the quest introduction. Damn it. Everyone had become quest monsters with rewards. If it was in the past, they could at least run away if they could not defeat the enemy. However, now that the teleportation points and flights have been sealed, they could not even run away if they could not defeat the enemy. As a veteran player, the people of Chuanjin understood the craziness of the players. If there was no reward, no one would care. However, this time, the Divine Light God had gone all out. He had promised special rewards for the quest and pulled everyone in Yu Huicheng into the sea of people's war. Chapter 990. Evildoers Run Wild was the most aggrieved. He was only there to visit, but he was labeled as a Yu Huicheng player. It could not be helped. Every time they arrived at a city, they had to go to an inn to set up a respawn point. This was common sense for players. Even a noob like Wang Yu had developed this habit. In the end, he became one of Yu Huicheng's people. Evildoers Run Wild was even more wronged. Although the reward for completing the quest was unknown, the penalty for failing the quest was clearly stated. Players would die from overeating, and their immovable assets would be confiscated. The so-called immovable assets were things like shops and houses in the guild residences. Even the items that players kept in the bank were considered immovable assets. When faced with such a quest, the first thing that players would think of was to put their precious items in the bank. After all, they could level up, and as long as their equipment was not dropped, they could make a comeback. However, now that things had changed, players would probably not dare to put their precious items in the bank anymore. After all, compared to the chances of a main city being destroyed, the chances of items dropping on their bodies were much lower. Evildoers Run Wild was pitiful. He was carrying tens of thousands of cape shards. There was nothing else in his bag. If he was killed, he would be worth more than the boss. Thinking of this, the evildoer Rampage wept uncontrollably. Everyone even suspected that the system had purposely done this in order to catch all the unruly citizens of Yu Hui City, who had taken the lion's share of the event in one fell swoop. At this time, Wine Pool and Meat Forest were discussing with the leaders of the major guilds about not buying the Cape Shards to drag down Chuanjin. However, when they heard the system notification, the expressions of these guild leaders became strange. Normally, they would not dare to attack Yuhuichin. After all, no matter how big a guild was, it was nothing compared to a main city. However, now that Yu Huichang had become the target of all the light faction players, the nature of the situation had changed. Once the quest was released, countless players would surround and attack Yu Huichang. No matter how many players there were in Yu Huichang, they could not compare to the number of players in the entire game. The current Xuanzhen was not the same as before. In the past, these people had nothing to lose, but now they had the resources that everyone was jealous of. To these people, this quest was the best opportunity to take advantage of the situation. In an instant, the meeting that was originally about how to drag down Xuanzhen became a meeting about how to attack Yu Huicheng. Of course, Afterglow City's players couldn't just resign themselves to fate. If they won, they'd make a name for themselves. If they lost, they'd go bankrupt. Currently, Afterglow City's players had cut off all means of retreat and were forced into a corner by the system. If they resisted, they might still have a chance to win. If they did not resist, they would definitely die. There was no such thing as morality in the game. After the Light Faction's army attacked Yu Huichang, they would definitely take everything that they could take. Unaffiliated players were poor and didn't have much money. Perhaps they didn't care. As long as they took all the valuables in the bank and went offline for a few days, they wouldn't suffer any major losses even if Afterglow City fell. However, it was different for the guild players. They had their own residences and friends. They had worked so hard for so long. How could they just sit back and watch as their residences were taken away? Therefore, as soon as the quest was released, the guild leaders, led by Blood Red War Flag, immediately opened a chat room and began to discuss the matter of survival. At this time, everyone was in a bad mood, especially Blood Red War Flag. They were depressed. D***MN. Is there something wrong with the system? Why is it targeting our Yu Huichang? Captain Don't Shoot snorted. Nonsense. Not only does our Yu Huichang have a player Castellan, but he also took more Cape Shards than all the other players in the game. Everyone heard this and cursed. According to the ratio, we didn't take the majority. Moreover, we are not the Castellan. 2012, who had always been against Xuanzhen, even scolded Xuanzhen. That's right. What the F***CK is going on? Why are Xuanzhen's people benefiting while we are the scapegoats? Hearing 2012's words, all the guild leaders were stunned. Blood Red War Flag played dumb. 2012, what did you just say? I don't think I heard it. I didn't hear it either. The others all agreed. What the F***CK? What nonsense are you talking about? If Xuanzhen's people knew about this, I would probably be dead before they could even fight their way in. 2012 came back to his senses and asked Blood Red War Flag. Xuanzhen's people aren't in the group, right now. Blood Red War Flag said, I know these people. They don't care about the guild base. They should be offline now. Damn, this group. 2012 heard this and felt sad and happy at the same time. He was happy that Xuanzhen wouldn't hold a grudge against him. He was sad that this matter was caused by Xuanzhen's people, but they just left and let everyone else be taken advantage of. Moreover, although the Quanjin sex members had terrible characters, their strength was obvious to all. Their dozen or so members were definitely no weaker than a large guild's combat power. This was especially true for the duo of Wang Yu and Wu Ji. To this day, they were the nightmare of every large guild in Afterglow City. Now that they were facing such a strong opponent, everyone didn't have much confidence. If Xuanzhen's people weren't here, they would be even more uncertain. That's not right. Why are they online? At this time, Don't Shoot pulled on his friends list. Oh, is that so? Everyone's expression became even more confused. To be honest, everyone really didn't want to work with Xuanzhen, but without Xuanzhen, it was like they didn't have anyone to rely on. Their hearts felt empty. A group of big guild leaders had to rely on a dozen people. These people couldn't believe it. Just when everyone was wondering whether or not to pull Xuanzhen's people in, Blood Red War Flag had already made a move and pulled Xuanzhen's people into the chat group. Huh? What's going on with the chat group? Everyone was confused when they were suddenly pulled into a group by Blood Red War Flag. Only Wuji said, "What's going on?" They're definitely discussing how to deal with the enemy. The quest was released for almost 10 minutes before we were pulled in. They couldn't have been discussing how to deal with Chuanjin in these 10 minutes, right? It seemed like Wuji was quite self-aware. He knew that Chuanjin was Yu Huiqing's main target. Hearing Wuji's words, everyone was quite embarrassed. However, Blood Red War Flag's face was even thicker. They quickly changed the topic and said, "Boss Wuji, right now, we are in a life and death situation. You have to make a decision for us." Wuji's face was full of disdain. "TSK, I'm not the city lord. Why should I make a decision?" "Nyoga, Blood Red War Flag," and the others cried for Wang Yu. Wang Yu had a good temper. Seeing everyone like this, he wasn't in the mood to bully them. He waved his hand and said, "Approved." Chapter 991. Maps of major cities were available for sale in the library. Although they were expensive, none of the guild leaders had the time to waste on such a matter of life and death. Not long after, the guild leaders arrived at the meeting hall of the Castellan's mansion with a map in hand. The last time they had gathered here, the Castellan had still been an NPC. This time, however, the Castellan had changed. Everyone could not help but sigh. Of course, they were not here to reminisce about the past. After the guild leaders had gathered, Wang Yu and Chuanjin's group arrived at the meeting hall from the backyard of the Castellan's mansion. Seeing the arrival of Chuanjin's group, the chaotic scene in the meeting hall immediately quieted down. "Everyone, take a seat." Seeing that all of Yu Huiqing's big shots had arrived, Wang Yu nodded in satisfaction. Hearing this, the guild leaders hurriedly found a place to sit. At this time, Wuji asked Blood Red War Flag, "Did you bring the map?" "Yes." Blood Red War Flag hurriedly took out a map from its bag and handed it to Wuji. Yu Huiqing's geographical location was in the neutral zone between the light faction and the dark faction. This kind of border major city had one characteristic: it was easy to defend and difficult to attack. This was also the only advantage that Yu Huiqing had. After examining the map for a while, Wuji inserted the map into the magic projector. At the same time, a huge map of Yu Huiqing was projected on the wall. At this time, Wuji asked the guild leaders, "How many players can we mobilize now?" After calculating for a while, the guild leaders replied, "Less than 200,000. "Less than 200,000? Wuji frowned when he heard this. He did not expect that. As a main city with more than 300,000 people, Yu Huiqing would only have less than 2/3 of its population, excluding the tens of thousands of guildless independent players. In reality, this was within reason. After all, the bosses present were guild leaders of major guilds with several thousand subordinates. Even the weakest among them had close to 1,000 subordinates. The bigger the guild in the game, the more expert players there would be. These people were big and powerful, so they naturally wouldn't just sit and wait for death. Those small guilds didn't even have a base, so there was absolutely no benefit in getting involved in this hopeless muddy water. The players in the virtual world were the most realistic. They couldn't be expected to shed blood for something that didn't benefit them. When the guild leaders came up with this number, their hearts turned cold. Although 200,000 players did not sound like a small number, it was nothing compared to the total number of players in the light faction. Even if they had 300,000 people at their peak, they wouldn't have the slightest confidence, let alone now that they had lost another 100,000 people. "Well, I don't think we have any hope of winning this time." Yeah, the difference in strength is too great. For a time, fear appeared on the faces of some of the guild bosses, and they even had the thought of retreating. It wasn't that these people had never fought in a city war before, but it was always one city against one city. They had never encountered a situation where one city was the target of so many main cities. They were just a group of gaming geeks. Their understanding of war was still stuck at the level of group fights. As for how to win a battle where they were outnumbered, they didn't have the slightest idea. Almost everyone was thinking about how they were going to fight against so many people with 200,000 players. How were they going to fight against others? If they were only going to rely on their aura and resurrection points, they would just be using their lives to fill the gap. As such, it was normal for them to be afraid. On the other hand, the people from Xiuanjin were used to fighting against many people. They were calm and even a little excited. Seeing that these guild leaders were so useless, Mingdu couldn't help but mock them. Hee hee, you guys dare to mess with guilds with such little guts? The guild leaders' faces turned red from Mingdu's mockery, but they couldn't refute anything. Compared to the people from Xiuanjin, they were indeed timid. They could only say, "We're just speaking the truth." Wang Yu smiled and said, "Since you guys feel that you're speaking the truth, can you let me say something too? Please, please." Everyone was still a little afraid of Wang Yu. Wang Yu said calmly, "I think we'll definitely win this time." Everyone was stunned. What else? Everyone thought that Wang Yu would say something about Li Jufu, but who knew that she would just shout a slogan? Isn't that enough? Seeing everyone's reaction, Wang Yu couldn't help but ask. Everyone looked at each other and didn't know what to say. All right, it seems like I'm not suitable to fool people. Wang Yu sighed and looked at Wu Ji. You go. Wu Ji was speechless. He stood up and said, that City Lord Neo is right. Although we're at a disadvantage, we also have an advantage. There's no reason for us to lose this time. Oh, Blood Red War Flag and the others knew that Wu Ji was full of tricks. Hearing Wu Ji say this, they couldn't help but ask, what advantage do we have now? Wu Ji said calmly, home advantage. What do you mean? Everyone was a little confused. Everyone knew what home advantage meant, but they didn't understand. Facing so many enemies, even if they had a home advantage, what could they do? Hee. Wu Ji took out his staff and pointed at the map. Our Huicheng is a main city at the border. It's easy to defend and hard to attack. We have a great geographical advantage. Can't you all see that? So what? Aren't we defending the city now? What does fighting with a city have to do with geographical advantage? Everyone had fought defending a city before. Under normal circumstances, they would rely on the city walls and weapons to fight against the invaders. The so-called geographical advantage was completely useless. Wu Ji sighed and said, your battle strategy is too conservative. If we were in a situation where the difference in strength between us and the enemy isn't that big, then fighting with the city would naturally work. But in this situation, how many waves of firepower do you think our 200,000 players can withstand? Everyone was speechless. Indeed, there was no such thing as water and food in the game. As long as the firepower of the players was on the same level, the defending side would not lose. But now, everyone's enemy was the entire light faction. With such a huge difference in firepower, Yuhuicheng's city walls were not good to rely on. On the other hand, the main city was easier to focus the enemy's firepower. Then what do we do? Hearing Wu Ji say this, everyone was interested. Wu Ji smiled and said, it's very simple. Surround the enemy and attack the reinforcements. Surround the enemy and attack the reinforcements? What does that mean? Everyone was confused again. Besieging a point to attack reinforcements was a very old battle strategy. For the players, it was still difficult to understand. Wu Ji explained, for example, if a piece of meat is placed somewhere, an ant will definitely not be able to move it. So, they will gather their comrades. Once these ants gather their strength, they will be able to move the meat. So, as long as we destroy the reinforcements before these ants gather their strength, they can only look at the meat. Chapter 992. It could be said that Wu Ji was very cultured. This was originally a very complicated tactic, but when it came to Wu Ji, everyone understood it in a few words. That's right. Besieging the enemy was using the final target as bait to attract the enemy's firepower and then destroy the enemy's reinforcements. At this time, Yu Huicheng was that piece of meat, and the Light Faction's players were the endless stream of ants. If the players of Yu Huicheng wanted to protect this piece of meat, they had to slowly whittle down the enemy's forces before they could gather their forces. Seeing that Wu Ji was so awesome, everyone could not help but feel excited. Blood Red War Flag could not help but ask, so what should we do? Wuji looked at Blood Red War flag and said calmly, "All 200,000 players under our control should leave the city to fight the enemy." All of them leave the city? Hearing Wuji's words, everyone was stunned. Defending the city, as the name suggested, was to defend the city. After all, with the main city as a shield and the revival point as backup, everyone's chances of survival would be higher. Now that the enemy had arrived, wasn't it crazy to want everyone to leave the main city and fight the enemy instead of defending the main city? Even if they really wanted to surround the main city and attack the enemy's reinforcements, at least some of them had to protect the main city. Even though Wuji's words were very provocative, Wuji's action of going against the grain caused everyone to be suspicious. After all, they were all people with families and businesses. Even if they were to die, they had to be alive. They couldn't just send themselves to their deaths. Seeing that everyone was confused, Wuji used his staff to draw a few circles on the map and asked, "Do you know where this place is?" The guild leaders picked up the map in their hands and said, "Sunset Mountains, Sunset Swamp, Sunset Valley." "That's right." Wuji nodded and said, "Afterglow City is backed by the Sea of Dusk. Right now, we don't have enough water resources, so our enemies won't be able to come over from the sea. So, there are only 3 entrances. Our enemies come from all the major cities and guilds, so they won't be able to gather their forces in a short period of time. They're just a bunch of mobs." Hearing what Wuji said, everyone fell into deep thought. Ambushing the enemy at the entrance was not a bad idea, but everyone was still obsessed with defending the city. Wuji naturally knew that it was hard for these veteran players to change their minds about defending the city, so he pointed his staff at Yu Huicheng and said, "Everyone, look here. Yu Huicheng's city is isolated and without help. Once the enemy's army reaches the city, even if they don't gather together, we can only fight them head-on. When that time comes, we will be like fish on the chopping block. If we defend these 3 locations and slowly nibble away at the enemy, we will have the initiative." Wuji's words were very clear. These were all guild leaders, so no matter how stupid they were, they could not understand what he was saying. Hearing this, everyone took a deep breath and sighed in admiration at the limitations of defending the city. Then they couldn't help but nod and sigh. Boss Wuji's words make sense. Wasn't that right? The number of players attacking the city was unpredictable. Yu Huicheng's small area couldn't stop the enemy's army from gathering together. When the enemy surrounded the city and smashed down the city walls, they would be able to destroy the city walls. Defending the city would be like a cornered beast fighting. However, there were only 3 entrances to Yu Huicheng's territory. These enemies could only enter in batches. If they followed Wuji's plan, everyone would lie in ambush at the entrances and rely on the system's natural terrain to carry out an ambush. They would be able to gain the upper hand by making the first move, and they would be able to instantly form a situation where they outnumbered the enemy. The 2 methods were very obvious, so it went without saying which one to choose. At this moment, Qiuanjin's image in everyone's hearts became even greater. Everyone respected Wang Yu, who was an unstoppable individual hero, but Wuji could still calmly analyze the pros and cons of himself and his opponent under such an absolute disadvantage, and quickly come up with a countermeasure. This kind of tactical talent was something that these people had never seen before. In the past, everyone thought that Qiuanjin was able to dominate Yu Huicheng because of Wang Yu's powerful and peerless skills. Now, these leaders finally understood that that was just a one-sided view. As the saying goes, a gentleman fights with his wits, not his strength. Having an opponent like Wang Yu was indeed scary, but having an opponent like Wuji definitely couldn't be underestimated. In a desperate situation, as long as there was a slight hope of survival, people would do their best. After hearing Wuji's strategy, the people who were already close to despair were reignited. Blood Red War flag stood up excitedly and said, "Then, Boss Wuji, please give us the order." "Okay." Wuji pointed at the map and said, "Since we're facing the enemy together, we have to let go of our past differences and fight together. Our 200,000 people will be split into 3 groups, so I have to choose 3 people who are familiar with each other to lead the group. As for how to lead them, it's up to everyone. Everyone said in unison, "Boss Wuji, please give us the order." Okay. Wuji heard this and ordered. 2012. You take 80,000 people to ambush at the entrance of Sunset Swamp, preferably with archers. Blood Red War Flag. You take 100,000 people to ambush at the entrance of Sunset Canyon, preferably with assassins. Leader, don't shoot. You take the remaining players to ambush at the entrance of Sunset Mountain Range. This. Boss Wuji, I have an opinion. At this moment, Leader, don't shoot, suddenly raised his hand. What's wrong? Wuji asked. That. Leader, don't shoot, said in a depressed tone. Why do I have so few people? It was fine if Blood Red War Flag didn't have many players. After all, Blood Red Alliance was the guild with the most members in Yu Huicheng, and they were also an old guild. But what was 2012? In Leader Don't Shoot's eyes, it was just a small fry. Why did he have so many people? Wuji smiled and said, Leader, having more people doesn't mean it's useful. The one you have is a special force. It's our Yu Huicheng's most important protection. I see. Thank you, Boss Wuji. It seemed like Wuji knew how to talk. Hearing Wuji say this, Leader Don't Shoot's depressed mood immediately brightened up. Seeing that Leader Don't Shoot didn't have any doubts, Wuji said, For the sake of confidentiality, I will send the details of the battle to the respective leaders. Does anyone have any objections? Actually, Wuji did this because he had no other choice. When the forest was big, there were all sorts of birds. There was always the fear of spies. If he were to announce the details of the battle and someone leaked it, then he would be finished. 2012 Blood Red War Flag and Captain Don't Shoot were the three biggest guilds in Afterglow City. The reason why they were allowed to lead the team was because they knew that no matter who would betray the guild, the three of them definitely wouldn't. No, everyone said in unison. That's good. Wuji smiled at everyone in satisfaction and said, Now everyone go and set up the ambush. Complete the mission. The leaders received Wuji's orders and quickly left the meeting hall. Seeing everyone leave, Wang Yu was confused and asked, What about us? How many people are we bringing? Chapter 993. No way. You want me to defend the city? Wang Yu felt a little uncomfortable when he heard Wuji's words. Wang Yu was a responsible person. This matter was caused by Wang Yu. Everyone was fighting with their lives on the line, but Wang Yu had to hide and defend the city. Wang Yu felt bad about it. Wuji laughed. Why are you in such a hurry? Their ultimate goal is the city lord. You're just bait. When Wang Yu heard this, he suddenly felt that he had been tricked as well. 120 minutes was not a long time, but it was not a short time either. It might not be enough for distant enemies, but it was more than enough for Yu Huicheng's players to set up an ambush. As time passed, the Light Faction's players began to gather at Yu Huicheng's entrance. As the countdown ended, a system announcement sounded. All players received a quest change. Kill Yu Huicheng's city lord, Iron Ox, and obtain Yu Huicheng's scepter within 48 hours. The attackers will win. Conversely, the defenders will win. The attackers were confident that they had absolute strength. They did not care about a mere Yu Huicheng. As soon as the quest started, the barrier around Yu Huicheng's entrance was deactivated. All players rushed into Yu Huicheng's entrance. Everyone had experienced sieges before. They knew that the defensive equipment on the city walls were not just for show. Therefore, whoever rushed to the front would die first. The large guilds were generally organized. They would not rush to the front as cannon fodder. The first to rush to the front were the ordinary players from the small guilds. Of course, ordinary players were not as ambitious as the large guilds. They only rushed to the front to kill a few more Yu Huicheng players to earn points. Therefore, rushing to the front was a win-win situation. Although the setting sun marsh was the border between Yu Huicheng and Thorn City, Thorn City's players weren't the first to enter. After all, Thorn City and Yu Huicheng were old neighbors. Most of the players from the two main cities were familiar with each other, so it would be inappropriate for them to take advantage of the situation. Of course, most importantly, there weren't any particularly large guilds in Thorn City. The players from smaller guilds all knew how deep Yu Huicheng's waters were, so they didn't dare to get involved. At this distance, who didn't know that Yu Huicheng had a group of ruthless players? Just because Thorn City did not have a major guild did not mean that other main cities did not have one. For example, Martial Moving Universe's Martial Supremacy was the best example. As the largest guild in the 7th server, Martial Supremacy's scale was even larger than Blood Alliance's. Apart from those random players who fought to be cannon fodder, no one dared to fight with them. Moreover, Martial Supremacy and Xuanjin had been enemies for a long time. Martial Moving Universe wanted to bring people to kill Yu Huicheng, but he didn't have the strength to do so. Now that the system had given him a chance to take revenge, how could he not grasp it? Seeing the first batch of cannon fodder rush into the setting sun marsh, Martial Moving Universe tyrannically led his subordinates and followed closely behind. However, the further they went, the more Martial Moving Universe felt something strange. Suddenly, Martial Moving Universe yelled, "Everyone stop! Let the players from the other guilds go first." At this time, Legendary Weapon beside Martial Moving Universe asked in confusion, "What's wrong? Why are we giving way?" Martial Moving Universe pointed at the cannon fodder players in front of him and said, "Didn't you notice that the players in front are all gone?" Sharp Weapon looked around and said, "This is a high-level monster area. I'm afraid those trash were eaten by the monsters." "Impossible," Martial Moving Universe said. "Those trash aren't strong enough, but there are thousands of them. How could they die without a sound? I think it's an ambush." "Huh, you guessed it right." Right at this moment, a voice came from the front. Immediately after, a short and fat archer popped his head out from a dozen meters away. He knocked an arrow at Wudong Universe, and an arrow with a white light instantly arrived. Wudong Qinkun hurriedly ducked to dodge, but the arrow flew right past him, hitting the throat of a mage behind him without missing a beat. The mage screamed as his health bar dropped by half. Just as he was about to dodge, a few arrows flew from other directions, turning the mage into white light. F***CK. Seeing the mage die, Martial Moving Universe was enraged. He pointed at the fat archer in front of him and said, "Who the F***CK are you? How dare you ambush me here?" Martial Moving Universe was also a player. He instinctively thought that the players of Yu Huicheng were all defending the city, so he thought that the ambushers were from other guilds. The fat archer snorted coldly. "Umph. Open your dog eyes and look carefully. My name is 2012. Yu Huicheng's territory is not to be violated. If you dare take another step, I'll chop you up and feed you to the dogs." 2012. 2012 was also a famous expert on the leaderboards. Hearing this name, Martial Moving Universe was surprised at first, then asked in confusion, "What are you doing here instead of defending the city?" 2012 sneered. "None of your business. Hurry up and get your people out of here, or else I'll make you pay." Martial Moving Universe sneered. "What a joke. With just a few people in your guild, you dare." Just as Martial Moving Universe was about to mock 2012 for having so few people, countless arrows came flying from all directions like a swarm of locusts. 2012 brought 80,000 people, of which almost all of Yu Huicheng's archers were here. Almost half of them were here. It was easy to imagine the scene of 40,000 archers attacking at the same time. After a round of shooting, Invincible Supremacy lost a third of his players. Martial Dong Qian Kuan immediately shouted, "Holy shit! How dare you make the first move? Hurry up and fight back." But after the order was given, no one moved? What's going on? Are you all stupid? Martial Moving Universe was furious. At this time, the other players of Martial Moving Universe said helplessly, "The range classes were all killed, what?" Hearing this, Martial Moving Universe turned around in a panic. As expected, the first round of shooting from Yu Huicheng's players had killed all the mages and archers. How many people are there on the other side? Seeing this scene, Martial Moving Universe immediately panicked. Martial Moving Universe had more than 10,000 people, and a third of them were range classes, which was more than 3,000. Losing more than 3,000 people was all range classes. Such a precise killing effect was impossible to achieve unless there were 10 times the number of enemies. What kind of trash was 2012? How could he have 30,000 archers as his subordinates? But other than that, the only explanation was that the other side had 3,000 archers who could instantly kill them. That's even more impossible. Although Martial Moving Universe doubted 2012's strength, Martial Moving Universe's side had truly lost 3,000 people. Regardless of the situation, Martial Moving Universe did not dare to face them head-on. Retreat, retreat. Thinking of this, Martial Moving Universe hurriedly ordered his subordinates to retreat. Chapter 994. My new book is in PK. Please collect it, recommend it, and give me tips. See the latest updates. Chapter 995. Hearing 2012's words, Martial Defiance was stunned. Before Martial Defiance could react, he heard the sound of arrows flying through the air, accompanied by the sound of magic effects. Unraveled, and the others raised their heads in panic, only to see a sea of magic arrows flying toward them from all directions. The Setting Sun Swamp was a combination of a swamp and a forest. The path was extremely muddy, and without an ice mage to clear a path, Unraveled's players were extremely slow. They became easy targets for all of Yu Huiqing's range classes. At this moment, Unraveled only had around 8,000 players. Yu Huiqing's players outnumbered him by more than 10 times. Moreover, without their ranged classes, Unraveled and his players were powerless to retaliate. Under the barrage of attacks from Yu Huiqing's players, Unraveled's players were wiped out in less than 10 minutes. Damn, as expected of Boss Wuji. That's an amazing strategy. He actually slaughtered Unraveled in just a few rounds. The players of Afterglow City were ecstatic to see their first victory against a powerful enemy like Unraveled Martial Sovereign. This was especially true for 2012. When he saw that Unraveled Martial Sovereign could not even last 10 minutes under the concentrated fire of tens of thousands of players, he was so proud of himself that he immediately showed off to Blood Red War Flag and the others. Damn it! When Blood Red War Flag received 2012's message, they did not set up an ambush outside the Setting Sun Canyon. Instead, they hid in the Setting Sun Forest to observe their enemies. As they had not received Wuji's order to attack, Blood Red War Flag could only watch as their enemies swayed in front of them. Seeing 2012's smug expression, Blood Red War Flag was extremely frustrated. They were the guild leader of Yu Huiqing's second guild, yet a small guild leader had stolen their thunder. How could Blood Red War Flag tolerate this? So, they sent a message to Wuji. Boss Wuji, are we still not going to attack? Have they passed the Setting Sun Canyon yet? Wuji asked. Quite a few players had entered the Setting Sun Forest. Sure, Wuji said. Detonate the traps. Let the assassins harass you. Got it. After receiving Wuji's message, Blood Red War Flag excitedly issued an order. At the same time, a series of explosions suddenly rang out in the Setting Sun Canyon. When the advancing players heard the noise behind them, they were startled. They hurriedly turned around. At this moment, a group of assassins appeared out of nowhere. They activated swift movement and dove into the crowd. The players who had invaded Yu Huiqing were from different guilds and different cities. They didn't know each other, so when they saw an assassin, they immediately fell into chaos and started attacking each other. At this time, the vanguard troops in the Sunset Forest had also heard the news. Knowing that they were being attacked from the back, everyone was afraid and wanted to turn back in panic. However, before these vanguards could leave the Sunset Forest, a group of warriors suddenly appeared out of nowhere and blocked their path. At the same time, countless people jumped down from the trees and surrounded the vanguard troops. When the Yu Huiqing players in the forest finished off all their targets, the invaders in the Setting Sun Canyon were also led into the forest by Yu Huiqing's assassins. The warriors guarding the gate opened up a gap and let these players in. Then, they killed another wave of invaders. The terrain of the Setting Sun Canyon was different from the Setting Sun Swamp. Because of the terrain in the Setting Sun Swamp, it was easier to set up an ambush. Apart from that canyon, the rest of the Setting Sun Canyon was wide open. The best place to set up an ambush was the nearby Setting Sun Forest. Moreover, the Setting Sun Canyon was a very suitable entrance for a large number of players to enter Yuhuicheng. Compared to the Setting Sun Swamp, this place was much harder to defend. As such, they had to split up the enemies in order to achieve their goal of blocking reinforcements. Under Wuji's command, Blood Red War Flag in 2012 won. At the same time, they also learned Wuji's strategy. The following guards were naturally very familiar with the situation. It was true that there were many invaders, but they were all fighting on their own. Their combat strength was extremely scattered. There were not many who could fight against Yu Huicheng's players. There was no need for Wu Ji to give any orders. Everyone followed suit. With the absolute advantage in numbers, all of the invaders were successfully blocked at the entrance by Blood Red War Flag in 2012 at a minimal cost. Compared to the two entrances to the Setting Sun Swamp and the Setting Sun Canyon, the Setting Sun Mountain Range was much quieter. It couldn't be helped. The other side of the Setting Sun Mountain Range was the Dark Faction. This time, Yu Huicheng had provoked an internal conflict. The Dark Faction couldn't wait to watch the show. Of course, they wouldn't interfere. Moreover, the entrance from the Sunset Mountains to Afterglow City was only a few meters wide mountain road. It could be said that one man could hold the pass against 10,000 enemies. As long as the invaders had a bit of brains, they would not choose this road that was equivalent to sending themselves to death. Because of this, Wu Ji told the captain not to shoot. He brought less than 10,000 people to guard the entrance. Seeing Blood Red War Flag in 2012 continuously repel the invaders, there was no need to mention the mood of these people. They all cursed Wu Ji for abusing his position to take revenge on Finger Heavenly Sword. The battle lasted for 2 hours, from 11 at night to 1 in the morning. The players of Yu Huicheng had the advantage of time, location, and manpower. They didn't let the invaders advance even half a step. At this time, the system made the first announcement of a truce. Yu Huicheng activated the barrier and called a truce until 8 in the morning the next day. It seemed that the system was quite humane. It knew that it couldn't force the players to play the game all night. Seeing the announcement, Wang Yu let out a sigh of relief. He quickly went offline to sleep. Although Yu Huicheng's players were full of energy, they remembered that there were still battles to come. So, they went offline to rest. At this time, the players who were rebuffed by Yu Huicheng couldn't sit still. After 2 hours of fighting, the invaders suffered countless casualties. They didn't even get to see the enemy. They were killed in one wave. No matter how many people there were, they couldn't withstand this kind of death. At this time, everyone took the opportunity to look at the map to see if there were any other routes to Yu Huicheng. At this time, the captain, Don't Shoot, was holding on to Wu Ji. He didn't let Wu Ji go offline. Boss Wu Ji, we didn't get along well in the past, but we also want to do something for Yu Huicheng. You can't do this to us. We haven't met a single enemy in the past 2 hours. The captain was about to cry. He had brought nearly 10,000 people to guard the Sunset Mountains. In the end, after 2 hours, they didn't kill a single enemy. They were like two idiots who worked there for 2 hours. Wu Ji really couldn't do anything about Don't Shoot, so he asked, Have you chopped the firewood that I told you to chop? Yes, we haven't done anything else for 2 hours. Now almost everyone has a stack of firewood. The party leader stopped firing and said, We're a big guild after all. You can't just use us as reinforcements. Besides, do we even need firewood in this game? Chapter 996. There was a saying in the art of war, never fight a battle unprepared. The players who attacked Yu Huicheng didn't understand Yu Huicheng's situation and rashly attacked Yu Huicheng. As a result, as soon as they reached Yu Huicheng's territory, they were attacked head-on by Yu Huicheng's players and suffered heavy losses. At this time, it could be said that they had learned their lesson. After the war stopped, these players began to prepare. From 1 in the morning to 8 in the morning, there was a total of 7 hours. These players had plenty of time to prepare. On the forums, almost everywhere in the game, players were discussing this matter. Unfortunately, these players weren't like Wang Yu and the others, who had a map of Afterglow City. Hence, even after studying the map for half the night, not only had they failed to figure out the answer, but they had also started cursing each other due to their differing viewpoints. As expected, the world of haters was extremely mysterious. Just as the war of words intensified and everyone wanted to go to sleep, suddenly, a post appeared on the front page of the forum. Big news! Yu Huiqing's map, the essential manual for attacking Yu Huiqing. The appearance of this post immediately attracted the attention of the players who were cursing each other. Meow. Everyone was troubled by the fact that they couldn't figure out Yu Huiqing's map. The appearance of this map was like charcoal in the snow. Therefore, everyone couldn't help but click on the post. In less than 20 minutes, the number of views of the post became the number 1 on the front page. However, after the players clicked on it, they were shocked. F***CK. The map inside was actually charging a fee to browse. The fee wasn't too high, 1 gold coin per time. But these days, there were countless scammers, and no one wanted to be a sucker. Of course, that was only for normal players. For the players of the big guilds, 1 gold coin was nothing. Moreover, one person who obtained the map could benefit the entire guild, so naturally, no one would feel bad about spending 1 gold coin. For example, a big guild leader like Winepool and Forest of Meat happily paid the money, and then everyone received a screenshot of Yu Huiqing's map. Although the screenshot was a little blurry, it was better than nothing. After a round of research, the leaders of the major guilds finally found a third way to enter Yu Huiqing. At this time, the sky was already bright, and the truce was over. After a sleepless night, the players braced themselves and began the second wave of attacks on Yu Huiqing. The players who didn't buy the map continued to attack like headless flies, following the route they had used the day before and getting killed. Wave after wave, they enjoyed it. However, after yesterday's battle and studying the map, the players from the big guilds who had bought the map had a good understanding of Yu Huiqing's terrain. The setting sun swamp had forests that were easy to ambush, swamps that were easy to kite, and high-level monsters that were easy to trap. It was a classic terrain that was easy to defend and hard to attack. Although the setting sun canyon was a little wider, and compared to the setting sun swamp, the dense setting sun forest behind, it was like a monster that chose its prey, and it was extremely dangerous. The U.S. soldiers weren't bad, but fighting in the forest was because they were scared out of their wits by the Vietnamese. No matter what, it was still Yu Huiqing's home ground. With this kind of geographical advantage, no one dared to go forward and die. Therefore, the players from the major cities and the major guilds took a detour around the Dark Faction and planned to attack from the Setting Sun Mountain Range. After all, the Setting Sun Mountain Range was next to the Dark Faction, and no one would expect anyone to pass through here. Not to mention, these large guilds were no pushovers. After yesterday's battle, they had a basic understanding of the other 2 entrances' ambushes. Based on the rate at which players died, they could estimate the enemy's exact number. The statistics of Yu Huiqing's overall strength had just been released, and it was only around 300,000 players. Setting aside how many people had logged off and gone into hiding after receiving the quest. Even if Afterglow City's players were all hot-blooded and none of the 300,000 players had run away, there were still nearly 200,000 players guarding the 2 entrances. Excluding the players defending the city, where else would there be enough people to set up defenses? After a series of calculations, the major guilds went to the Dark Faction to ask for passage. Under normal circumstances, the Dark Faction players would definitely ambush the Light Faction players. However, this was a special situation. Almost all the major guilds of the Light Faction were there, and their numbers were many times more than the local natives. Naturally, no one dared to cause trouble. This made the major guilds even more arrogant, and they came to the foot of the Setting Sun Mountain Range in a grandiose manner. Don't shoot. The team leader was cutting down trees with his men when he suddenly received a message from Wuji. Be careful. Some people are going to your side. Is that so? Don't Shoot was overjoyed when he heard Wuji's words. He quickly stood at a high vantage point and looked down. When he saw what was happening, he almost cried. There were more than 1 million players from all the major guilds. How many players were there? Don't Shoot wasn't sure either. However, Don't Shoot looked down from a high vantage point and saw a sea of players standing at the entrance of the valley. He couldn't even see the end of it. You're too humble. This isn't just a few. This is all of them. Don't Shoot was in tears. Not a single one of them came yesterday, but all of them came today. These people must be crazy. Wuji laughed. It's all right. This isn't all of them. Yu Huiqing's life is in your hands. Just do as I say. Got it. Don't Shoot nodded with certainty. While Don't Shoot was talking to Wuji, the players had arrived at the entrance of the valley. When they saw the valley that led to Yu Huiqing, all the players stopped in their tracks. This terrain, will there be an ambush? What the heck? This place was actually different from the map. On the map, this place was blank. There was no indication that this was a valley. Everyone thought it was a wide entrance. However, the terrain at the entrance of the valley was very narrow. Compared to the Sunset Swamp, this place was easier to defend and harder to attack. Everyone was hesitant. They weren't stupid. Even a child would know that if there was an ambush here, they would definitely die. Just as everyone was hesitating about whether they should pass through, a commotion came from the crowd. This is bad. The Dark Factions players are here. Everyone on F***CK. The Dark Factions players are here. What should we do? The players in front panicked when they heard the news of the Dark Factions attack. How could they not panic? They had openly walked out of the Dark Factions' main city. This was the Dark Factions' territory. With the existence of teleportation portals, the Dark Factions players would be able to gather their forces quickly. The two factions were like fire and water. They both saw each other as experienced babies. The Light Factions players had stayed here for a long time. It was not surprising that the Dark Factions players had begun their counterattack. Chapter 997. I'm really sorry. Chapter 998. Seeing that the Dark Faction players were about to catch up, someone in the crowd shouted, "Everyone, charge forward. Otherwise, we won't be able to escape." Hearing this, the players were stunned. Behind them was the main city of the Dark Faction. If they ran back, they would definitely not be able to escape. No matter what, Yu Huiqing was one of them. Furthermore, there was no danger in front of them. Why should they wait for death here? Thinking of this, the players panicked again. Of course, these guild leaders were not stupid. Seeing that the situation was out of control, they knew that someone was deliberately stirring up public opinion. So, they quickly came out to rectify the situation. However, at this moment, rays of white light lit up in the crowd. Then, someone shouted, "Oh no, there's an assassin." As the saying goes, 3 people make a tiger. The first 2 waves of attacks only caused a disturbance, but the last one directly caused chaos. The map was not big to begin with. This chaos did not matter. The players from the various guilds were all mixed together. Now that there were so many people mixed together, the situation was even more difficult to control. Moreover, these people were usually not kind people. There was a lot of friction between them. Some people with impure intentions even took advantage of the chaos to start an internal fight. Seeing that they were going to fight each other before they even entered the city, the guild leaders panicked. "You guys wait for death. We're leaving first." At that time, a group of players from an unknown guild shouted and rushed into the valley. What was the situation with the players outside the Sunset Mountains now? There were a lot of people, but they came from various guilds. Although they were not as disorganized and undisciplined as the ordinary players, these people all had their own agendas. Seeing that someone had entered the valley safely, the others immediately panicked and hurriedly chased after him. The players in front were afraid that their position would be taken by the people from other guilds, so they rushed into the valley. Seeing that the players in front of them were moving forward, the players behind them also rushed forward. Before long, the entire valley was filled to the brim. Just as they were about to reach the exit, the guild in front of them suddenly disappeared. Why did the people in front disappear? Oh no, there's an ambush. Seeing that the players in front of them disappeared, everyone was shocked and hurriedly turned around. However, at this time, the sky full of stones and torches had already fallen. Immediately, the valley was in a mess. As the queue was too long, and they were not from the same guild, The players at the back could not communicate with the players at the front. At this moment, the players at the front wanted to retreat, but the players at the back were rushing forward. That scene was simply too horrible to look at. White light flashed in the valley, and the flames burned brightly. The players in the valley were crushed to death by stones, burned to death, and trampled to death by their own people. Team leader Don't Shoot was so happy that his molars were showing. It was just a single round, and not a single soldier had been injured, yet he had taken down over 10,000 enemies. This was a record that team leader Don't Shoot had never heard of since he started playing. Fortunately, the valley was not large. Seeing that there were no players lying in ambush, the guild leaders of the various large guilds hurriedly issued commands, and the situation quickly stabilized. But this time, the players outside the valley were all scared out of their wits, especially those who had escaped death in that kind of situation. At this time, they had already decided to go offline and sleep. Damn it, I didn't sleep for one night and came up with such a dead end. What the F***CK? The guild leaders of the various large guilds were also flustered and exasperated. One after another, they ordered, "All of you look for it. I don't believe that there's only one entrance here." At the same time, Chuanjin and the others were about to go crazy. Looking at the blood red war flag and the others in the main city channel, everyone felt like a cat was scratching their hearts. F***CK, Wuji, didn't you say that there would be people coming and you told us to wait for them? Now that you have blocked all 3 paths, how are we going to let them in? Mingdu was brandishing his staff and poking Wuji. Wuji laughed and said, 3 paths? If you only look at the map, how are you going to play the game? Question mark. Mingdu was stunned. He was puzzled. What do you mean? At this time, Wang Yu drew a circle at the location of Sunset Peak in the Sunset Mountain Range and said, Sunset Peak is a terrain that can be climbed. In Rebirth, there was a skill called Climb. It was a skill that was used to climb walls and mountains. Back when Wang Yu was doing the faction dungeon quest, Yi Yeshu and Jiang, whose Lone Ranger, climbed Sunset Peak with their bare hands. Therefore, this place left a deep impression on Wang Yu. Although the climb skill was not a common skill, there were dungeons that specifically dropped the skill book. Nowadays, most expert players would learn the climb skill to protect themselves. As long as the invading players were not stupid, they would think of this. No wonder. Mingdu heard this and nodded. He then said, "We won't be unable to defend it, right? What do you think?" Hearing this, Wang Yu could not help but twitch his mouth. The condition to defeat Yu Huicheng was to kill Wang Yu. With Wang Yu's ability, even if he could not defeat so many people, he could still escape. On the other hand, Wuji said, "No, because of the 4th path condition. They can only send experts to attack. Climbing required conditions. For example, the reason why Setting Sun Peak could be climbed was because there were a few vines on its walls. However, there were only a few vines, and with so many players, there definitely wouldn't be enough. Moreover, when climbing, players were very weak. If they were discovered by the vines, then no matter how many players came, they would all die. As such, the best method was to have a small group of players kill the leader." Mingdu thought for a moment and was puzzled. He said, "According to the current situation, as long as we block all 4 paths, won't they never be able to enter? Why let them in?" Wuji laughed and said, "Everyone will grow. No one will stop moving forward. As for not guarding the 4th path, it is because we have to let them know that Yu Huicheng has no one to defend." Why? Mingdu was even more puzzled. "Because I believe that old cow won't be killed by them." As he said this, Wuji narrowed his eyes and revealed his signature sly face. Just as Wuji and the others had said, the players finally found the vines on the Sunset Mountains after some exploration. At this time, the guild leaders were gathered together to discuss what to do. Hearing this news, Forest of Wine and Forest of Flesh was overjoyed and said, "There really is a path. Which of our guilds will go first?" "No one can go first." At this time, a sorcerer dressed in green with a white folding fan in his hand took a step forward. Seeing the sorcerer, Forest of Flesh was stunned at first, then hurriedly asked, "Could it be that your excellency is Boss Forwood?" "Not bad. The sorcerer nodded in satisfaction. This sorcerer's main name was Four Trees, Make a Forest. He was the boss of White Emperor Pavilion in Merchant Mountain City. He was also a famous master tactician and was very powerful. White folding fan and green robes were the signature attire of Four Trees, Make a Forest. Anyone with a little common sense would be familiar with it. Chapter 999. Seeing that everyone was looking at him, For Trees Make a Forest waved his fan arrogantly and said, "We have too many people. We don't know how long it'll take for us to go up one by one. We'll be easily exposed if we're such a big target, so I think it's better to create a diversion." Create a diversion? What kind of diversion? The others could not help but ask when they heard this. For Trees Make a Forest said, "It's simple. We'll attract firepower in the valley. Then each guild will pick a team of their most elite players to crawl over." How many people are there? Can they break through Yuhui-chung? Hearing Four Trees Make a Forest's words, the guild leaders were skeptical. Everyone knew how to defend a city. Each guild would only pick a team of 1,000 people. It was impossible to break through the city. Four Trees Make a Forest said, "How many people do you think Yuhui-chung has? Isn't it 300,000 according to the official statistics?" Wine Pool and Meat Forest said, after some thought, "Then there's no problem." Deadwood Forest said, "There are almost 200,000 Yuhui-chung players in Sunset Swamp and Sunset Canyon. We can't calculate how many there are here, but it definitely won't be too little. Yuhui-chung's defense is definitely weak now. If we sneak over, even if we can't break through Yuhui-chung's defenses, we can force them to retreat. Once they retreat, we can march in safely. Wouldn't it be perfect when our army is at the city gates?" Hearing Four Trees Make a Forest words, the guild leaders began to think. Four Trees Make a Forest was right. They did not know if Yuhui-chung's defenses were weak now, but if someone were to sneak in, the guards at the entrance would definitely be weak. They could gather their forces and charge in. As long as they entered the city and occupied the inn and resurrection point, everything would be fine. All right, let's do as Boss Four Trees says. Thinking up to this point, the guild leaders made the decision and began to select elite players from the guild to begin the sneak operation. Soon, thousands of elite players were selected, and the other players began the second wave of attack. At the other two entrances, the normal players also charged forward with all their might. However, in the eyes of the prepared Yuhui-chung players, these unorganized and undisciplined charging were suicidal. But not only did these people not trust each other, they even looked down on each other, so there was no way to effectively unite. In the end, they were easily pushed back by 2012 and Blood Red War Flag. Although this was a siege battle, aside from the fact that PK points were not taken into account, the players lost the same amount of EXP as usual. 10% was not a small amount. After several charges, nearly half of the players had already lost levels, and nearly 1/10 of the players had lost equipment. Although the attacking players weren't united, they weren't stupid. On the contrary, they were quite smart. Otherwise, they wouldn't have fought for themselves. They charged forward again and again, but were repelled again and again. These people could be considered to have experienced Yuhui-chung's impenetrable defense. Originally, everyone had come here full of hope to obtain some rewards. However, they hadn't even seen the shadow of the opposing players. Everyone grew more and more disappointed and even more desperate. After dying so many times for nothing, some players saw that they couldn't attack and decided to turn back. Damn it, it was better to go back and clear a dungeon than to lose levels here. Humans were afraid of someone taking the lead in everything they did. Seeing that one person had given up, the others followed suit and retreated from the siege. As a result, the number of attacking players on both sides decreased, and the fewer they were, the more desperate they became. The more desperate they were, the more they retreated. These players were like a contagious disease, and in the end, they collapsed. Until now, they couldn't even organize a proper charge. Boss Wuji, the attacking players have retreated. Almost at the same time, Blood Red War Flag and 2012 sent messages. "Okay, got it. Everyone, you've worked hard. Just leave the rest to us. Everyone, take a break." After Wuji replied, he said to Wang Yu and the others. Everyone, stay alert. The thieves are coming. F***CK. We've been waiting for a day. Hearing Wu Ji's words, the Chuanjian people all sat up as if they had been injected with chicken blood. Then they shouted anxiously, "How should we fight?" Wu Ji said, "Fight however you want. As long as old cow doesn't die, we'll win." After saying that, Wu Ji asked Wang Yu, "How is it? Old cow, are you okay?" "Nonsense." Wang Yu laughed. "As soon as I saw the conditions to conquer the main city, I knew that they were going to lose. TSK, as expected of old cow." Everyone praised. At this time, the thieves had arrived not far from Yuhui-chung. As it was a thieves' operation, the players who came this time were basically of two professions, assassins and archers. Of course, there were also a few high-level grandmasters of combat. The characteristics of these three professions were also very obvious. They were very mobile and good at hiding. Other than grandmasters of combat, they were very strong in PK and were experts in assassination. However, when they arrived at the bottom of Yu Huiqing's city wall, everyone was a little stunned. Meow. It was clearly a defensive battle, but Yu Huiqing's city wall was actually empty, and the city gate was also open. The scene was extremely strange, and for a moment, everyone could not help but stop in their tracks. "There won't be an ambush, right?" The leading assassin, called Sunset Bloodsbane, said cautiously. At this time, a grandmaster of combat whose body was as wide as two people sneered. "Ambush my ass." This is clearly an empty city stratagem. Their people have already gone to close the entrance. It's normal that there is no one guarding. Yu Huiqing's people are very cunning. The Grandmaster of Combat seemed to have lingering fear of Yu Huicheng. At this time, someone laughed and asked, "Hey, war is peace. I heard that your raptors were defeated by Yu Huiqing's people?" At this time, someone laughed and asked, "Yes. War is peace," did not deny it all. "Let me tell you, if we encounter a large group of players, we can fight. If we encounter a small group of players with yin-yang fish on their chest, we can just retreat." Hearing the words "war is peace," everyone could not help but laugh. "Are you going to talk about that Grandmaster of Combat called Iron Ox again?" Along the way, "war is peace" had repeated Wang Yu no less than 20 times. At first, everyone was still a little wary, but "war is peace" was repeated over and over again. Everyone instinctively felt disgusted, and there were even people who wanted to personally see how powerful this legendary Grandmaster of Combat was. "Just listen to me," "War is peace" said. "Don't underestimate them." Everyone laughed. "Listen to you. Are we still playing? Don't you know that Iron Ox is Yu Huiqing's castellan? Just wait for the main force to surround and annihilate him. Why are you looking for death?" "War is peace" helplessly spread his hands. "Ha! Why are you, a mercenary group, getting involved in the affairs of us big guilds? Look at how scared you are." Everyone laughed again. After all, those guilds that had truly suffered at the hands of Chuanjian had chosen to stay silent this time. Chapter 1000. War is Peace was a veteran expert with a reputation. How could he tolerate being mocked by such a group of people? He immediately said angrily, "What a joke. If it wasn't for your boss paying a high price for me to bring people to help, I wouldn't even care about you. If anyone thinks that I'm not good enough, feel free to come and fight me." Everyone had heard of the raptor. War is Peace naturally did not dare to belittle it. Seeing that War is Peace was angry, everyone immediately shut up. At this time, Sunset Bloody Killer hurriedly mediated, "Old John, they don't know any better. Don't be like them. Let's go." War is Peace was not the kind of person who liked to argue with others. Seeing that no one dared to speak, he snorted coldly and was the first to enter the city. The others also curled their lips and followed him in. In this mission, as the Castellan, Wang Yu was the main target, so Wang Yu could not leave the city. Moreover, the attackers would refresh Wang Yu's coordinates in the mission bar every once in a while. Therefore, the first target of these people after entering the city was Wang Yu. According to the coordinates that were refreshed last time, Wang Yu was within the boundaries of the Castellan's residence, so everyone went straight to the Castellan's residence. At this time, Yu Huicheng was already an empty city. It was terrifyingly quiet. A group of people arrived at the castellan's residence from a city gate, but not a single person was seen. Their hearts were cold. However, everyone still reported all the information in Yu Huicheng to their respective bosses. When the bosses received the information from their own teams, they were all amazed and admired Four Trees make a forest from the bottom of their hearts. They all asked, "Boss Simu, what should we do next?" Four Trees Make a Forest waved his fan and said, "The players in Yu Huicheng dared to bet all their bets on the main city's entrance. It seems that they are very confident in their defense. They intend to use the besieging point to attack the reinforcements method to stop the opponent. The people who use this tactic are not simple." Besieging point to attack reinforcements? What do you mean? Most of the people present had never heard of this tactic. It's a tactic that uses the main city as bait to wipe out all the reinforcements. If we keep fighting on our own, they can continue to wear us down like this. Four Trees Make a Forest gave a simple introduction, just like Wuji. After listening to Four Trees Make a Forest's explanation, everyone could not help but gasp. As the saying goes, family members know their own affairs. These guys all had ulterior motives and had never been united from the start. However, the tactic of encircling and attacking reinforcements was to exploit the opponent's lack of coordination. If Four Trees Make a Forest hadn't pointed it out, they probably wouldn't have been able to break through Yu Huicheng's defense line even after a few more days. Then what do we do now? Winepool and Meat Forest asked. Four Trees Make a Forest said, "First of all, we have to be united. If there's any conflict, we should at least enter the city first." Of course. The various guild leaders all expressed their opinions. Also, I admit that the person who used this tactic is very smart, but he neglected one point. Immediately after, Four Trees Make a Forest said, "What do you mean?" Four Trees Make a Forest took out a simple map and said, "Do you guys see? Of these three entrances, Sunset Valley is the widest, and above Sunset Valley is a very large empty space. It can't be defended at all. Their people can only hide in the Sunset Forest behind it. As long as we gather our forces above Sunset Valley and charge into the Sunset Forest together, their ambush will definitely be of no use." "Makes sense." Winepool and Meat nodded, and then said doubtfully, "But right now, these two entrances are already occupied by the small guilds and solo players. Although the small guilds and solo players individually could not compare to these large guilds, but when they gathered together, it was an astronomical number. Normally, these vulnerable groups had already been bullied enough. In fact, when they gathered together, they would definitely have a common enemy. So these guild leaders did not dare to bring people to fight for positions." Four Trees Make a Forest laughed and said, "This is the point that you Huicheng players have neglected. Those small guilds and solo players are here to take advantage of the situation. Do you think they will still stay here if they die all the way out? They won't retreat in the face of difficulties, right?" Everyone heard Four Trees Make a Forest say this, and everyone frowned. At this time, a message suddenly came from the crowd. "The players at the other two entrances have been killed, and they have all retreated, Hearing this news, the hearts of the guild leaders shook, and they could not help but look at Four Trees Make a Forest again. Four Trees Make a Forest smiled faintly and showed a confident expression. "I think now is the chance." The guild leaders said in unison, "Good. We will retreat now." The house-stealing players in Yu Huicheng were clearly on the verge of breaking down. They came to steal, but they could not even find the people, so how could they steal? At this time, everyone even felt that Yu Huicheng was so lonely without even a defender. Otherwise, they could at least kill a few people for points. Being invincible is so lonely. Everyone began to roar at the sky. However, when they looked up, their hearts almost flew out of their chests. At this time, there was actually a person squatting on the roof. That person wore a kung fu uniform, had a square face, and a gaze like lightning. He was quite powerful. Although he was half squatting, it was not difficult to see that he was very muscular. "Hey, what are you guys called?" The person squatting stood up and looked down at everyone with a smile. F***, who are you? Which guild are you from? What are you doing up there? You scared me. Come down, come down. Seeing that the big man was so friendly, everyone immediately recognized him as one of their own, and their mood immediately became relaxed. God knew how unfamiliar this group of people were. Maybe they did not even recognize one of their own. Of course, there were still people in the team who recognized this big man. War is Peace was shocked when he saw the big man's appearance. He glanced at the big man's chest and suddenly shouted, "Not good. He is Iron Ox. Everyone run." Wang Yu heard this and turned his head in surprise. He looked at War is Peace and said, "Hi, it's you. How'd you been?" War is Peace did not reply and turned to leave. However, none of the others retreated. Instead, they all became extremely excited. F***, I searched high and low for you, but by chance I found you without even looking. We were looking for you. As they said that, everyone knocked their arrows, pulled the bowstrings, and shot. The assassins also rushed forward, using their climbing skills to start moving up. However, there was a tragic unity in the game called the Archer's Target Point. These guys basically did not know each other, and along the way, they did not discuss how to work together. When this arrow was released, hundreds of arrows were almost all aimed at the same point. Wang Yu only moved slightly to the side and dodged all of them. Then, while the archer's skills were on cooldown, Wang Yu jumped directly from the roof and landed in the middle of a group of archers. Boom! You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.